Hello, hello, hello. If you can hear us, if you can see us, please do let us know, because we are both incredibly vain people that like to be listened to and looked at, contrary to perhaps popular belief.
Or, if you happen to be me, the intro is, of course, today is the night of the vampire.
Let's count how many bloodlines there are.
How many bloodlines are there in Warhammer? One little bloodline. It's going to be a fun one. Again, much like our last stream, this was supposed to be one of our Halloween streams because spooky month and all that, but life got in the way.
We're all caught up now.
This time, Lindsay collapsed. It went weird, but we're here finally.
Yep, I had just enough time to grow a beard spooky enough for Halloween because it's so out of control. But that's why I'm getting a haircut this week. But yeah, it's good to be back. We've got quite a bit we're going to be talking about today as far as trying to conjure up a vampire. There's a lot of different ways this can go. And honestly, the hardest thing will be fitting it within the time frame that we have allotted for today. So that's going to be a whole interesting thing. Just so you know, neither the okay. You know what? I'll fix that while we're doing intro stuff. Thank you for that.
Oh, good to know. We'll get that sorted as we go. I would also like to say that much like our other Create streams, this one will be audience participation, which means we're going to be discussing stuff, throwing it out to you to vote about, and then taking your votes and going off in different directions. And much like all of our other Create stream, your ideas are what makes this work. So if you have ideas, do post them in the chat. Obviously, super chats always come in first. For example, like this. All hail Strigo, says Antonio over there. We will always bring up our super chats first. And if super chats outdo everyone else, then so be it. But if we've got a really cool idea that we spot in the comments, we might bring it up. Anyway, as Grim's Isaac comes in afterwards with a lost bloodline, please. That's definitely something we could consider.
Yeah, there is definitely at least one vote I can think of where there will probably be fights with broken bottles and other sharp objects as we try to figure out what's going to be the situation for what kind of vampire we're dealing with. Because I think a lot of people are going to have very strong opinions about which vampire is the best vampire. Clearly, she's a Lorebeards vampire.
Yeah, indeed. Is there a best vampire?
Necrarch!
Someone clearly thinks that there's the best vampire. Dopey Dumbo. Necrarch! Let me just bring up this small one here from Sticks and... Oh, that's not the one I was trying to bring up. Naughty. Sticks and Stones. And he looks snugly. Certainly has. I am... in the depths of early winter here in Scotland, and I could put on my nice, lovely, warm heater up there, but if I do, it does this in the background, which I'm told is not the best sound to have in a podcast that some people might be listening to. So
nonsense. It's comforting.
Save your ears. The only thing going in the background will be me. Not my fan up there.
Okay, that's a fun little comment there. And before I forget, my players wanted me to thank you for inspiring one of the most memorable vampire NPCs I put in our D&D game, Dimitri, who thinks that the average adventuring party is boring.
Well... I'm absolutely delighted that your players have gained even the smallest modicum of inspiration from our random warbling that we throw in your direction every single week.
To Paul, thank you very much for the a simple message. Heed it well. Give us more lore. Well, don't worry. You're going to be having plenty of that, especially in the weeks and days to come, as we're not even through the week, and we still... I mean, this is your third Lorebeards in 7 days, and you're about to get another one tomorrow. Though we won't be there. Well, I mean, we'll be there.
It's 40k Lorebeards tomorrow, and tomorrow night at 9 p.m. they are going to be discussing, or indeed creating, in their own little way, a what if, which is, what if the God Emperor himself, die. Now, you might go, well, that corpse emperor on a throne, isn't he already dead? No, we're doing the what if the emperor was legit gone, dead. History, everything that is left in the material realm popped off into the warp where he becomes whatever he becomes afterwards, which I imagine will be decided by the stream. And all of the after effects of such things as, if you know your 40k lore, the Astronomicon no longer being there because there's no emperor to do it, which means no warp travel. 40k is going to be different, just like completely and utterly different. So that'll be a super fun one tomorrow, 9 p.m. UK time.
Other than that, we hope y'all are having a great week. We're surviving, doing our little things over here. God, I feel like I'm man, I have been having my power knocked out so often lately by these thunderstorms. It's that time of year for us where we just get giant thunderstorms, and every single one of those sons of bitches has knocked out my power, and it's so frustrating, and I am ready for it to be over. So that's been super fun because I keep wanting to stream or like work on videos and stuff, and then my power flicks off, and it's like, well, there goes however much work I was doing. And you think I learned my lesson, and you'd be wrong.
On my side, it's just been a lovely, easy day looking after Lindsay as we still make our way through her post having been rather poorly situation. And we went and framed a bunch of Warhammer art. For example, there was a very lovely piece from Mark Gibbons, a pencil piece of a Skaven Grey Seer that was inside the very first ever Skaven army list that we've got the original of. And we just got that sent off to the framer, and it'll be going up into this room in about 3 weeks' time. And we did originally send it off to another framer, didn't like what they did, so we're off to a new one.
Huh. Fair enough. I need to do that. I have so many like random pictures I've picked up at like conventions or just like over time that I need to hang, which would be nice because then I could have like the green screen like down because there'd actually be something on the wall behind it.
Yeah, totally.
Whereas right now there's nothing.
Right there, as I'm pointing somewhat randomly, that there is the original oil painting from Ralph Horsley for the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay starter set. It sits in my background over there. I've got a bunch of other pieces inside the office and over inside the streaming room as well. Original pieces from Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 1, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2 and 3, and I've got a bunch getting framed from Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4. So yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yep. Just to answer a quick question, just here. Can we not share on Twitch anymore? Not yet. You will be able to soon because the Lorebeards Twitch channel just started. We actually have to like work a little bit to get it to be affiliate, but we should be affiliate by the end of this week.
We're hoping by the end of this week we'll have everything set up. If there's some weird disaster, we'll tell you, but it should be all organized by the end of this week.
Yeah, so we do really appreciate those of you who are watching over on Twitch, because if there's Twitch viewers, then Twitch will be like, oh, people actually want to like do things over there. Great.
Yeah, quite. And also, if you happen to be watching on YouTube and are just sitting on your computer with little else going on, or perhaps have your phone handy, go switch on the Twitch on as well, because we'll appreciate it. It'll take us over the line over for affiliates. That'd be awesome.
But I can say YouTube memberships are now live and active. And I did turn those on because I was proactive yesterday. So those do exist now if you want to do something to kind of support Lorebeards on a regular basis. And I'll be trying to work on some like little incentives and stuff for that. But they are now live. Great.
Sweet.
Cool. Awesome. Good. All right, so I think we're ready to kind of get into, if we wanted, I don't know if you want to do a little intro for this one or not.
Yeah, let's do an intro. I think an intro is worthwhile. Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay has done most of the in-depth discussion about all the little foibles of vampires and vampire lords et al. In particular, a book called Night's Dark Masters by Jody McGregor and Steve D dive deep into how to create your own versions of vampires. And to a degree, we're going to be doing that today, but we're going to be less interested about all the finicky special rules, although we might discuss some special traits that our vampire definitely has. And we're going to be more interested in the story of the vampire lord we're going to be building today. There is, however, as is always the case with all of our create your own type streams, going to be lots of polls. So we're going to be asking you to tell us what you would like this vampire to be like. The most obvious one is going to be a discussion about the bloodline. So my intro today is going to be mostly, what are the vampire bloodlines and what the heck do they mean? What are the differences? Because we're going to have to at some point say, which one do you want? So let's just cover in the intro what the core ones are. Loosely speaking, way back in the dark mists of time of not, as I often like to do, Games Workshop's history, but Warhammer's history, there was the first vampire, Neferata, who created a big mighty elixir, the vampiric elixir, loosely using the original elixir of unlife created by Nagash. And it created vampires. Vampires being these bloodthirsty, immortal creatures that we all know and love. And from Neferata came the very first vampires. And those first vampires each had their own characters and traits. And those characters and traits were passed down generation by generation to the vampires that were created later. Now, for those of you out there that know your vampire lore, you might go, wait a minute. This sounds like Vampire the Masquerade. That's because it kind of is. Now, if you've read the Vampire the Masquerade books, you're going to be in very safe territory as we discuss the different bloodlines, because Vampire the Masquerade was clearly an influence for what became the 5th edition of the Vampire Counts army list. The first time it became the Vampire Counts, and they introduced bloodlines. Vampire was huge in the 1990s. Absolutely massive. One of the biggest role-playing games in the world. And when it came to creating a new version of vampires, it was almost impossible not to be influenced by them to some degree. And as I recall, it was Thomas Prinanen that did the 5th edition of the army list. In fact, I might ask him directly if he was influenced by Vampire. It seems obvious that he was. I do think it might be worth asking him directly whether it definitely was the case.
I would just love you talk to him. He's like, vampires? No, I made up the whole concept of vampires. What are you talking about?
You're like, yeah, sure. So, what are the vampire bloodlines in Warhammer? We have 5 primary bloodlines. Are there others? Yes. Do we want to consider them today? Maybe. But there's one that I'm going to nix right from the outset, and Sotek might disagree, and then we can have a debate, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to nix this one because we don't need more of them. One of the plans for this stream is to create something new, interesting, and different. And the very first bloodline we're going to discuss is the core one that everyone knows, the Von Karsteins. The Von Karsteins are your classic vampire. They are the nobility of the night. They are shapeshifters. They are tyrants. They are blood-sucking monsters that we all know from famous Warhammer characters like Conrad von I'm Totally Mad Karstein, or Manfred von I'm Totally the Best Necromancer Ever Karstein, or indeed the founder of the line, Vladimir, definitely not Dracula, honest Vladimir von Karstein, who lives in Sylvania, not Transylvania. He lives in Sylvania, a completely different place, and he's definitely not just like Dracula, honest. So the von Karsteins are, they're one of the most entitled of all the bloodlines because they are nobles through and through. They are aristocrats and monsters through to their very core. We know this bloodline really well, and there's lots of famous examples of this bloodline to the point that it's a core part of many of the stories of that the vampires are given. Indeed, the very name for the army list, the Vampire Counts, comes from the von Karsteins because they're the Vampire Counts. None of the rest of them really are. They're not counts. It's just a complete misnomer. It's a bad name for their army. It's really only the Karsteins, to the point that the Karsteins are the default most people know. I would prefer to nix them and say we won't make a Karstein today. But you might disagree, and if that's the case, get into the comments right now and tell us, no, I want to make a frickin' von Karstein because that's awesome. Because as you know, what I want does not win the day in streams like this. It's what we all want that matters.
To be fair, I don't think I've seen a single comment being like, Oh, von Karstein.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me at all. Next, we'll go to the Blood Dragons, the Brotherhood of Warrior Knights. These guys are less about the necromancy and the of the night with their swirling cloaks, and they're much more about combat mastery. Most of them are the best swordsmen that you can find in the old world. Most of them don't do a great deal of necromancy. They're not the most subtle of horrors. They are mostly solitary killers looking for the next big thing that they can chomp down on and drink dry. They are somewhat one note with most of their characters, so this could make an interesting bloodline. Their personal mastery of weaponry being such a sole focus that many people, when they write them, only think about that and don't think about the people that might have become them. Would you want to add something there, Ryan?
What I would add for the Blood Dragons is that, like, okay, I will be looking for potentially very stupid avenues that we can explore to keep our votes nice and exciting. And I will note that while it's not 100% confirmed, many people, there have been the little hints throughout the lore that many of the Vampire Coast seem to come from the Blood Dragon line. If you follow the idea that Luther Harkin is related to them, which does seem pretty strongly suggested. So perhaps that could be a vampire pirate route if you're wanting to get a little weird with it.
Oh, I mean, is that really weird, or is that just the same as what we've already got?
Well, I mean, we could make it weird.
Vampire pirate? We've never heard that before.
Ours wouldn't be Lustrian. It'll be totally unique.
Be 100% unique. Moving on, the next most obvious one is the Lamians. The Lamians are, well, they're the whisper behind the throne. They are the secret keepers and the great spies of the vampire world, all led by Neferata herself from Silver Pinnacle. They are subtle. They work behind the scenes. They are great city vampires. And indeed, of all the bloodlines, they're the ones that cultivate the existing societies the most and also infiltrate other societies. So you'll find there are Lamians not just with the places that we always know, the old world courts, but there's also Lamians who are slinking into places like trying to, I don't know, we discussed this on one of our previous streams actually, when we said that possibly some of the orc cities have been infiltrated by Lamians and how those Lamians would present differently to best blend in and work with them. They are ultimately the perfect spies that are cultivating human civilization, but they are so much more than that as well, whether they are trying to manipulate dynasties or just manipulate a single individual who is powerful. They are very much mostly women, but not completely, but almost entirely are.
Yep, there have been a few boys that have slipped through the cracks, as they always do, those little rascals.
Quite. Let's pop over to, let's say, the Necrocs. The Necrocs are, they're necromancy made manifest. These are sunken corpses and definitely nothing like the Nosferatu from Vampire the Masquerade.
Nothing like them.
Nothing like them at all. They have sacrificed their beauty and sometimes even their sanity for a better understanding of the arcane. They live mostly in the world of the dead, not in the land of life. And they are noted for their constructions of undead flesh stitched together in a variety of different ways. Some of them are... some of them are associated with plague. Some of them are associated only with studying vampirism and studying necromancy in particular. They are, of all the bloodlines, the most obsessed with Nagash's teachings and with necromancy as a whole. Think of these as the cadaverous vampires, the Nosferatu-like creatures that you have almost certainly seen in popular media all over the place.
Yeah, they also tend to be kind of the most isolationist as well. Of that, they're kind of your find a dark tower somewhere in a great mountain range or dark forest, and they just stay at home, ordering in food most of the time, not going out very much, don't socialize as much as they should, all that stuff.
And finally, the last of our big five are the Strigoi. Now, the Strigoi are...
tragic.
Tragic, yeah. They're the tragedy of vampirism made manifest. Originally, the Strigoi bloodline used to rule a great city where vampires and humans lived hand in hand, and depending upon which version of history you go with, ruled together with vampires over them, rule together hand in hand in this perfect vampiric realm. However, that came crashing down because of various invasions and the manipulations of outside forces. The Strigoi today are often described as ghoul kings, hunched back giant monsters who have completely lost their humanity and often their sentience, or indeed at least their ability to think clearly, a parody of what they once were. Many of them wearing the tattered robes that they once may have worn in previous iterations of themselves, wrapped around and surrounded by ghouls instead of humans, ruling over a court of monsters. They are monstrous. Normally, they are the lost fallen kings that have been cursed because of, one would argue, their great folly at thinking that humanity and vampires could live together in harmony, much as Neferata supposedly may have originally tried to do with Lamia all those millennia before. They are the great ghoul kings and the monsters of Warhammer vampires.
Yeah, and that will definitely be a route to go if you're hoping for more. Well, if we do end up settling on Strigoi, we'll end up having to decide: do we want to go the more monstrous route, or do we want to go more the Ghoul King route, which are technically more differentiated, and things can get kind of weird within that.
Absolutely. So those are our 5 primary bloodlines. We have other bloodlines we could dive into, but I would err on caution here. What we're attempting to do is build a really interesting vampire character that fits into Warhammer. If we go with one of the other bloodlines, we're going to be making it up, because most of the other bloodlines require that, which means we're going to be making up something that sort of sounds vampire, sort of sounds Warhammer, sort of sounds like it might fit, but it'll be ultimately a unique creation. If we go with one of the 5, and I would suggest 4 primary bloodlines, if we do that instead, we get something that's definitely 100% Warhammer, and we can then investigate what we can do differently with those.
So what I will note here is not to crestfall any people, but just to get it out of the way. We are not going to be going into like a new bloodline, because that will be its own stream. I'll just go ahead and do that now. Eventually, we will do a let's make a bloodline stream where we can create like the bloodline Matt Mises, or we can explore what Jade vampires can be and stuff like that.
That'd be fun.
So that's something we'll do eventually. So today we're going to build a vampire, but we're going to use one of the core bloodlines. But we could also create a mutt. Those are very popular as well.
Yeah. So you might go, well, what is that? Well, if you were sired into or created into one of the core bloodlines of Warhammer, let's say, for example, you were created as a blood dragon, and the person who created you went, let's go round and rod with swords and hunt ourselves down eventually a dragon so we can drink it and become free of vampirism, yet be eternal forever. And you mess around for a couple of centuries like that and go, this sucks, man. You can be in Warhammer because of largely the input of Nathan Long and what he did with his vampires, particularly over in the Elrica books. You can be effectively resired and become a vampire of a different bloodline, which means that you can mix bloodlines and become stronger. You can also drink down the blood of another vampire entirely and take on some of its traits, effectively taking its power by sucking it down. Definitely not like Diablerie from Vampire the Masquerade, if you know that game. So there are different ways that you can make your blood stronger. Manfred von Karstein, for example, is noted for having taken in all of the other bloodlines to get as much power as he possibly can from other bloodlines. It's also worth noting that down through the generations of vampires, some vampires just don't know what their original bloodline was. So it's possible to create a vampire that is not just of uncertain bloodline, but literally doesn't know where they came from. Possibly because somewhere up their tree of bloodlineness, they were sired by a vampire that had taken blood from more than one bloodline. So when they passed on their traits, it was a mixture of different traits that they inherited. All those things are possible. But again, I can't help but feel like we should err more strongly on doing one of the core bloodlines, just because that means we can examine one of those really well, decide how we'd like this one to manifest, and then possibly go, well, what can we do differently? What can we do to create a unique, interesting vampire lord that summarizes this bloodline up in a way that makes you go, oh yeah, it's definitely one of those, but at the same point makes you go, oh, that's clever. Oh, that's a really nice idea. Let's run with that and see where it goes.
So I'm going to, of course, do the super greedy thing, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's get caught up with super chats, and then we'll get into it because we're on a timetable, so we're gonna fly.
Yeah, so, just so we all know, we're on a tight timetable. This will be a 3-hour stream, and we're already 25 minutes in.
Actually, I'm going to go ahead and start the first vote because that'll be the smart thing. So here's what we're going to do, because I'm going to make this easy and cut out a vote that we'd otherwise have to do. Whoever is the highest super chat between now and the end of this vote can decide one of two things. Are we simply going to build a vampire who is the highest voted? So like if Necrarch, say, got 31% and that was more than everybody else, we do a pure-blooded Necrarch, or up to the person that super chats the most before this poll ends. So the next, we'll say 5 minutes. 5 minutes. This is an important vote. Or are they a mutt with the percentages being how much of each bloodline they have in them?
Oh! I state my preference. I'd rather it just be one rather than a mutt, but you might think differently. And that's the whole point of these streams.
Yeah, so we are, because YouTube is annoying and only has 4 choices, we are going to nix the Von Karstein for this particular thing because we want to make something new and weird. And GW has done freaking Von Karstein to death and back.
Yeah, I mean, even if you look inside the Vampire Count army list for the various editions of Warhammer, you tend to find that the primary stories they tell are the stories of the Vampire Wars, which influenced across the Empire from around about 2000 up to around about 2300. So about 200 years of unending war against Vampire Count after Vampire Count after Vampire Count, which ultimately ended up with them all having their asses handed to them. So yeah, we've got a lot of stories of the Von Karsteins, and it might be nice to go into a different direction.
Yeah, also, I've apparently just learned that I guess due to our current status on Twitch, we can't do polls for
We can't?
So... Oh, wait, no. Hold on. Maybe we can. Hold on. I have to... Wait, watch. Hold on. See if I can do a magic trick. Performing magic. Okay, does it work now? No, it doesn't. What the heck? Did they change something?
Well, if that's the case, if you want to do a vote, dive over into YouTube, apparently.
Yeah, apparently it's not working. So I don't know what that is. The poll has started.
So it's over on YouTube. So the betrayal of Twitch has been made. Indeed, in fact, has. The Draven says the betrayal of Twitch has indeed occurred.
Hopefully the hell out of it.
That'll no longer be a problem.
I'm hashtag or / polling the hell out of it. It's like, nah, you don't get to do nothing.
So go get your votes in now. That's over on the YouTube stream. You can go vote right this very second as to which one of the various bloodlines we should be doing. I don't know which I prefer out of those 4.
Yep. And while those are going, we're gonna do super chats. Or get caught up. Boop. Necroplayers, since most of us are white. You don't know our demographics. Should we exclude foreign vampires like Jade Blood and so on? For today, yes, but not because we're white, but because we're trying to keep it focused on the core bloodlines. We'll talk about Jade vampires at some point and kind of flesh them out. Though it would be nice to have someone that's an expert on the topic join us for that particular stream. Also, keep in mind that the highest level super chat that comes in between now and the end of this poll will get to decide whether or not we're doing a mutt or a single bloodline vampire. So if you want to have the deciding factor on that, time's ticking. Stephen Lucas, my running experience. Lamian Duelist acted more like a blood dragon, challenged Wallach Harkin to 3 duels. 3 of them ended in her decapitation. I do love that she keeps going back for more. That's delightful.
That's funny.
Getting gleeful. Can you get Warpstone of individual wins? So
yes,
that is
each one of the wins has got its own crystalline form, but generally they're manufactured. They don't occur naturally.
Yes, you'll find some of that kind of mentioned in like some of the magic-focused books. And Age of Sigmar has taken that idea and developed it into something completely crazier. But you can steal that and backport it if you want, very effortlessly.
Totally can. But Realms of Sorcery for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd Edition has an entire section dedicated to it.
Senchmeister, fantasy settings don't have enough vampires that are just giant fuck-off monster mosquitoes. That is a seed I am planting. Yeah, Darkest Dungeon did make that into a whole DLC, which sucked. It's objectively good, but God, I hate that zone. It sucks so much. But yes.
Hard.
Inquisitor Thomas, clearly the vampire should be part of the best vampire bloodline.
Let me see you try.
Zimish?
That's not bad. It's really funny because it's one of those words that are pronounced differently by different writers. Zimitsi, Zimishi, Zamishi, there's lots of different ones. If you want a vampire bloodline that's close to the Vampire the Masquerade equivalent, you probably want to go Necrarch. They're very similar in many ways, although the Zimitsi have got a lot from the Karsteins as well. They're a bit of a crossover.
Get on it, you noisy dining chair.
They fleshcraft everyone using vicissitude.
Dopey Dumbo, favorite Vampire the Masquerade bloodline, Malkavian game.
Malkavians are the very insane, touched by their antediluvian bloodline, and they're quite fun. One of my very first vampire characters was indeed a Malkavian.
I think I took a poll and I got Malkavian as the result.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Wouldn't surprise rude.
Wouldn't surprise me at all.
Necro player, joke bloodline sufficient, the Twilight bloodline.
No.
They glitter.
Get out, Necro player. Get out.
Getting Gleeful, would you be open to the line of Vashtis, but just not Von Karstein's? Not today, but maybe another day. Antonio Runza, I am maidenless, so I empathize with the Strigoi. Well, maybe if you spell maidenless correct, you would have more maidens.
Harsh! I mean,
kidding.
Maybe true, but harsh!
We love you. We love you just the way you are. There's nothing wrong with you. You're perfect, and we love you, and you're wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Antonio.
Gordon Shima, I want Vampire Elf just to be controversial. We'll do a race vote. Y'all are going to have to pull hard.
No, we won't.
We don't want a halfling vampire option.
We don't want a mean vampire. We're doing a good one. I want to have at least one at the end of this that I could use in Lawhammer if I wanted to. Then we can actually have our creation pop up in game. That'd be awesome. I will not use a mean vampire.
Maybe we'll make it an incentive thing. White, go super creative and create a Misi vampire based on Mansa Musa. Oh, that would be very fun. Ultra Witch Desert Dweller on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land, aka Nehekara. That would make for a very cool character. Not for today's stream, but perhaps in the future, that would make a very cool character. Gideon, are Lamia all based on the House Karna of Tremere? Tremere?
The Tremere. No, not really. They certainly have certain traits, but the Lamians are much more their own thing and share many more traits with the Toreador from Vampire the Masquerade.
Okay, also, Ushoran lives. We'll see about that. Could there be a modern-day attractive Strigoi? There can. I mean, there can be anything. So, could you do that? Sure. It would be unlikely, but you could.
One of the goals of streams like this is often not to dial away from what they are, but to take what they are and view it through a different light. So if you take away the core trait of that particular bloodline, you kind of lessen that bloodline, lessen the character you're creating. You're basically going, I want to have the character with all the benefits of this line, but none of the negatives. And that, in some respects, is just weak. It's much better to embrace those negatives and perhaps dial into them even deeper.
I think if you did this, you would have to come up with a story and explain how his weaknesses are different. Like, how his weaknesses are still Strigoian, but I tried. Anyway. Grim Isaac, what about Transmale Lamian? That would be a really cool idea for a character. It would be, I think, not as easy for me and Andy to build as it could be with like a certain, a special guest that's maybe more in that sphere. But that is something that theoretically could happen on the stream.
Easy.
Contract Crafted, could Zacharias / Manfred usurp Nagash as incarnate? Yes, that would not have been that crazy.
Yep.
This chat is a bloodbath! I'm going to end the poll in 1 more minute. Ricky Chapman played as Strigoi in a Wolfrock campaign. He was an engineer from the Empire and helped build the steam tanks. A lot of fun. Nobody expects the vampire to pull out a gun and start throwing bombs. Yes.
That's true.
Yes. More vampires using modern tech. Yes. Good.
One of the reasons that many of them don't, Ricky, is that it's less effective than their own vampire-given gifts. It's one of the things that someone like myself, who's played a 10-year real-world Chronicle in Vampire the Masquerade, there's nothing like playing the same vampire over the course of 1,000 years to make you realize just how unimpressive most tech is in comparison to what they themselves can do. Pulling a gun and throwing bombs is fine for a young vampire because there's not much they can do. But if we're creating a vampire lord, you'll probably find that their skills and abilities make pulling a gun and going bang or throwing a bomb look like child's play and look like nothing. Because they'll get to the thing they're throwing at the bomb faster than they can throw the bomb itself. And they'll do more carnage than something blowing up. So whilst I think this is a brilliant idea for vampires in general, for a vampire lord, I'm much less impacted because in many respects it takes away the age aspect of it. For an ancient vampire who has been there, seen and done it all, the modern contrivances are much less interesting than the overall character arc that they have themselves. If you were doing this, you'd have to then answer why. Why are they doing this in comparison to something else? There's lots of ways to answer that why, some of which would be super cool. So it's not that it's a bad idea. It's just that if you're deploying it as an idea for a really old vampire, you need deep and meaningful reasons for why you're doing that.
Yeah, I do like it very much as a younger vampires game, to try and like cover some of that ground between them and the older ones. But yeah, you can make it work.
It works really well for that, exactly.
Fishmen vampires, you cowards! All fishmen are vampires. Don't worry about it. I will not explain further. My experiment made a Lamian duelist. Oh, I think we got this one earlier, Stephen Lucas. I don't know if it went through twice or whatever, but thank you. Appreciate it. The exiled one. I'm hedging my bet.
That's a $20 chat. Let's just mark that for the record as we're diving through these quickly. Our highest is so far the exiled gun.
The poll is closed, and I did record the numbers.
Yep, me too.
Andy, are there thin bloods in Warhammer?
Yeah, so thin bloods is a concept in Vampire the Masquerade where if you hit the 13th generation, so as in from Cain all the way down 13 generations to the current vampires, you go past that, you start hitting thin bloods. Those where the vampirism is so thin that they have fewer powers, they're more prone to the beast taking over them, and a whole host of other things too. Is there equivalent in Warhammer? Kinda, but also kinda not. And by that I mean, if someone writes it, it's 100% a thing, but you tend to find that vampires have had so many different versions of themselves through Warhammer that the answer would be only if someone writes it. As it stands, it's not a particular theme that anyone has picked up. But the idea that there has been so many people it's passed down through, and thus the vampirism is weaker, is not particularly controversial for how vampires work within Warhammer.
Gideon, fan theory, Morcane is supposed to be the heart of the marshes of madness, but depicted as way up to the north. I think that in reality, Morcane and Morgum were different cities that get mixed up by old world cartographers. That could very well be the case.
That could easily be the case, and it's not really the most unexpected of fan theories. It's popped up more than once, and it's been a bit of an issue when mapping the area as well, because it does shift around a little bit. But that's fine, because let's be honest, where its actual location is would be tough to pin down. It's actually worse than that, though, because in the art, it's also been mixed up. In some places, it's depicted almost like a deserted area. In others, it's like a marshy mess. So both the art and the maps depict two very different places. So it'd be easy to say they are, in fact, two. And that's, again, £20. That beats $20. So at the moment, Gideon has it. Gideon Gleeful.
But then he arrived. MTD, thank you very, very much. Strigos will rise again. Avenge Usorid. So, MTD, I could go ahead and inform you that you get to decide, is our vampire a pure blood, whoever won the vote, which y'all can see, or is it a mixed blood? It is your choice.
And indeed, if you're no longer in the chat, which is possible because you might have just dropped that and run off to listen to us later, we will go with the tone of your chat. So if you don't say anything at all, we're going to assume that you want the one that won the vote, which is the Strigoi to win the vote, and we'll be making one of those. But if you come in, oh, indeed, you already have come in. You want to bring it up?
Pure blood. So it's
a pure blood.
So we are working with today, as we're getting ready to just jump into the next vote, a pure-blooded Strigoi.
Awesome.
Honestly,
this is
not who I
fun.
thought was going to win. Honestly, not.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. A pure-blooded Strigoi.
Okay,
Oh.
so I'm going to go ahead and jump into the next poll immediately, which is, this one's going to be very simple, but it is important, which is, I think, do we want to go with a man? Do we want to go with a woman? Or do we want to go with androgynous / unknown?
Unknown monster. So yeah, the man, the monster, or the woman. Male, female, or other.
Yeah, I don't know why I expected you to say something that sounded a little more fancy. Does the man, the monster, or
The
woman? It's like, okay, never mind. I thought there was something coming there.
So male, female, or other. Then when it comes to the Strigoi, you tend to find that because people associate ugliness with male characters, they almost always go male. The female side of the Strigoi is barely explored. Monsters, as in of uncertain gender, are also relatively common. So if you want to go for the uncommon option, vote for woman. If you want to go for the most common option and then possibly diverge into a different tale, go for man. If you want to go for the almost expected option, go for the monster, the other, it's something else. It's entirely up to you. Again, get voting. That vote, again, is only over on YouTube because Twitch is being an ass this evening. So go vote now over on YouTube. We've already got 76 votes in, which is brilliant. See if we can get up to at least 120. That'd be lovely.
Yeah, we'll wrap this one up pretty quick, but that'll give us a chance to get caught up with super chats.
Certainly
Inquisitor Thomas. Okay, all these super chats need getting Sotek to struggle with Vampire the Masquerade clans. Kiasid Bruja?
Kiasid, the Bruja.
Aramanes?
Yep.
Banu? That one's easy.
Yeah,
Hakim?
Banu Hakim, actually.
Banu Hakim, okay.
Yeah.
There could be commas here. Ventru?
Ventru? Yep, Ventru.
And La Sombra?
Yeah, La Sombra, the Shadows.
There you go. I mean, like those
good.
are, I've seen worse. Antonio runs a Sotek first. Rude.
This made me laugh when it came in.
Learn Italian and I will learn English. I love you all the same. Dude, I would get fucking roasted trying to do anything Italian. I know my limits. Thank you. We appreciate you. Benjamin Frazier, Clan Dava,
yep.
For
Or
life.
Diva, if you prefer.
Vampire the Requiem represent. I think I'm pretty sure I'm gonna play Vampire the Masquerade next year for Halloween.
You talking about the computer game?
Yeah, like the classic.
Yeah, the computer game's okay. I played it end to end. It's not a great game, and it's why I immediately went on to playing Cyberpunk, because Cyberpunk is just a better game on every single front, and also a better version of a 90s tabletop RPG. So I completed, because I am the sad person I am, Vampire the Masquerade 3 times, and then I was like, this game is pesh, threw it away, and then immediately picked up Cyberpunk and went, this is the one that I should be playing instead.
I would love to run a TTRPG if there's like any streamers out there that want to and want to have me on as a guest. Oh, you know what? We could do that for tabletop role play.
Yeah, we totally could do that maybe for tabletop.
That would be a great idea.
For those of you who don't know, Vampire the Requiem was the replacement game that White Wolf made to replace Vampire the Masquerade, as they were making a more almost choose your own version of what you want vampires to be, the Deva being over on the Toreador side, as in like for like input of each other. It wasn't quite as popular as what came before with the World of Darkness, and the World of Darkness sort of returned with Vampire the Masquerade effectively replacing the Requiem again.
I love when studios do that.
It's a good experiment.
Stephen Lucas, Vampire Pistol. Vampire Pistol outruns the bullet, throws person into the bullet. You can just kill the guy. Why the extra step? But you know what? Style points do matter. All right, and that will be time. So we are going with an overwhelming majority for a female Strigoi.
Okay, that's cool, because this is something that Warhammer as a whole tends to sometimes forget, and that's that there's something other than men. So it's nice that we're going to be diving down to something different. It's also nice that that's what you want to explore through the course of the stream. It's also something when it comes to the Strigoi is often just simply pushed aside because they go, oh, it's men, big and muscly. Oh, it's definitely men. Ugly, definitely men, definitely men. We can't have perish the thought a woman who's not pretty. We can't perish the thought of a woman who can't entice me with their big woman boobs. No, we can't do that. Definitely not. It's got to be a perfect woman. Let's just make Neferata be the perfect vampire, and every other female vampire known to man are all perfect examples of womanhood, while many of the vampires on the male side range from being handsome and debonair right down to absolute monsters. So when it comes to men, you tend to find you get a nice spectrum of different characters. When it comes to women, if they're not pretty, they get chucked out. And I think that's a big shame.
Yeah. So keeping the momentum going, because once again, we are on a very strict time schedule here.
Yes, we are.
We're going to go ahead and jump into what kind of Strigoi do we want to have for this stream. So in my head, I've got 3 options, but if Andy doesn't like them, or if he's got a 4th, that would be great. So first we have the Ghoul King. A Ghoul King is a type of Strigoi. So they look kind of like ghouls, but they're a bit bigger. So we're talking about one that feeds on corpses. They have like a large ghoul colony around them. They're going to live primarily underground, and they're going to live like kind of near like those kind of human places. But
so I do have one modification. Ghoul Queen.
Ghoul Queen. Fair point. Just like all my Tomb King book that is all kings except for when they're not. Second option is going for the monstrous variant. So a lot of Strigoi are very big. One of the notable traits of Ushoran's bloodline is that they get big. So if you want a big muscle mommy monster of our lovely Strigoi, that is an option you could go for. So we're talking like Vargol sized, if not bigger.
Really big, yeah, big mama.
Yeah. All right, and then our third option, I think, would be kind of not a Ghoul King, but a more humanoid vampire. So kind of like a Strigoi vampire lady that is, she's not a Ghoul King, so she's not, or a Ghoul Queen, so she's not held down by the strictures that come with that of being like kind of that outcast living in the graveyard stuff, allowing us to explore a little bit of a different aspect of the Strigoi. Like, what could a Strigoi vampire be who somehow avoided those 2 primary paths, but is something kind of more unique and different than what we've seen.
So let's give that one a little bit more character, because I think we could possibly give it one so that it sort of fits. So we're not looking for the ones that are associated with ghouls. Now, how that Ghoul Queen manifests could be any of many different ways. And we're not looking for one that's a proper giant monster and is horrendous in so many ways, and even the ghouls are terrified of it. We're looking at one that's still working with, to a degree, humanity. So it might be worth saying this is one that's on more human proportions and is perhaps traveling with a group of Strigoi. Now, you don't know who the Strigoi are. The Strigoi are the living descendants of the original people that the Strigoi used to rule, pardon me. And the Strigoi pretty much migrated north from their original city in the south and into the old world. And vampires are known to have followed many of them. So having one of those, I think, makes a nice way of doing it. One that can possibly fit into the shambling caravans that go from place to place and are shunned, because everybody knows that the Strigoi people have been associated in the past with vampires. So they as a people are shunned across the old world. And we can have her working with a group of maybe as many as 100, 200, maybe even 1,000 traveling folk making their way from one place to the next across the old world.
And I will say, for those of you that are crying out for a pirate, if you go with the Strigoi option, we'll be nice and we'll give you a vote where you can choose between a river pirate of the river Strigoi.
I love those.
Yep. Or we could go with the caravan Strigoi. So if we go Strigoi, we'll have a split.
I will say I'm a little bit biased in the River Strigany because I added them to Warhammer, so just a little bit biased.
You were sitting there like, oh, pirate? Nah.
And then suddenly, yes! Okay, so if we're looking for a fourth option, how about we then go instead of one that's going through the caravans, or one that's with the ghouls, or one that's a loner by themselves, we deal with one that was originally back in the city a long time ago in Moorcane. So we're talking about faded nobility, lost grandeur. We're talking about an ex-king, or in this case, queen, an ex-ruler who is sad and depressed and lost everything that she once had. So she was once one of the great rulers of one of the great cities of the Warhammer world. And now she is this broken, twisted, cursed vampire with a dark, depressing story that we can delve into. So faded grandeur perhaps might be an easy way to summarize that.
Yeah, so we've got the Strigany chief, the ghoul queen, the colossal monster, and the Moorcane noblewoman.
Chiefness.
Is that a word?
I don't know.
Chieftainess,
I mean, there is
sure.
a word that does that, but let's just move on.
All right, Paul started. Sure,
Cool.
I've made it a word.
Which I prefer out of those. Let's dive into super chats while we try to figure out which one's best. I mean, do I want a Strigany that's going around place to place? That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I think Monster's pretty cool. Ex-Faded Grandeur, pretty cool. They're all good in their own ways.
I know which one I would vote for, but I don't want to twist the vote. So I'll wait till after.
Me too, but I also don't want to.
Gideon, rather than pure monster, what about a Strigoi who is still dedicated to protecting the legacy of Strigos and acts as a guardian to the Strigany? Well, technically, you have two different options you can explore.
We've got two options where you could get either of those here.
Inquisitor Thomas, Mage the Ascension comes in with a steel chair. Kavadi, Chakravanti, Verbena, New World Order, Paftani, Hippoloi, Yoma, Kopole, and Nafandi. Hell is real, space is fake. Yeah, there we go.
Mage the Ascension, the game that made all the other games go, oh, wait a minute, we're all playing Mage. We just don't know it.
Next time, Sotek will do a stream in Italian for Talea lore. If you pay me like $1,000, I will do a stream where all I do is type what I need to say to Google Translate to Italian and then try to read it off. And then I'll get chased off streaming and beaten to death by angry Italians. MGD, my master plan for this has succeeded. I now reveal my monster shagger permit. Curse me if you wish. I have already won. Listen, the man knows what he wants. I can respect it. Inquisitor Thomas, Strigoi Disney princess. I think the fourth option would be
the ex-noblewoman.
Yeah, the ex-noblewoman.
Yeah, that would probably be the best Disney princess out of them.
Sorry about this. Casa Bavince. I tried. I'm so sorry. I tried. What's the strangest diet a vampire can live on?
Life force.
Life force or dar, like just pure magic is something they can live off. It has some unfortunate effects, like really unfortunate. But it can be done. Also,
many necroches, in fact, most aren't directly taking from blood. They're just sucking out the life force from those around them.
Yeah, Strigoi, a lot of Strigoi feed on corpses, which has led to their significant de-evolution. So that's also not good for them. But the strangest by far is the Necrarchs.
I'm a Necrarch.
Maglojaw, forgot to ask during Sunday stream, but was Nagash born on one of the Morslip holidays or when Morslip was full? Also, 1 month until Nagashmas. I don't know why Nagash took over Christmas. I mean, I love that movie, but it's not. I didn't realize that was canon. I would say I could see GW doing this, but I kind of prefer Nagash being sort of an ordinary man that becomes ascended to godhood as someone that was like born destined. But
agreed. It takes away some of Nagash's agency. Everything about Nagash is suddenly decreed upon his birth. It's better that Nagash actually comes to what he becomes through his own terms. So I would prefer if he wasn't, but I could very much see a writer desperately trying to lend even more legitimacy to Nagash and his special appointed birth doing exactly this. But I would prefer Magladroth if he wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Sorry. So someone's comment to when I was reading out all the names earlier.
Yeah, I saw that one too.
Sotek, okay?
Have you had a stroke?
No, I'm just
well.
struggling. Yeah, so unfortunately.
Yeah.
Inquisitor Thomas, I have a copy of Changeling the Dreaming.
Oh God! I'm interested to see a couple of these.
Sure, you know what? You paid what I'll give you your blood money here. Cluric Chuan, Pisces, Side, Ellen.
The she. You must have heard of the she.
No, I don't know what that is.
Oh wow. Okay, never mind.
Eilund, Gideon, I would assume. Skaha, I know Skaha. Varek, Noknitsa, Inanime, Solomons, Odines, Solomon's, Mannequins, Verdage, Gidu.
Oh, so close to Gilly-Doo. Yeah, we're now moving into the realms of fairies. For those of you who don't know these, and a lot of these words come from Irish and Scottish myth.
Dude,
so some of them are tough.
I fucking hate so much. It's not. Listen, the languages are great. I just don't understand
because I suddenly realized I didn't mention that.
But that when
Celtic myth.
Type it into modern English. Why? I don't understand why they didn't write it phonetically. That's what pisses me off.
Well, there's reasons. We could go into them.
We don't have time. Skylar Martin. Andy, I just want to let you know I've read enough TTRPG books you've worked on that with almost every RPG I open with nice to the credits, I think. Where does it say what Andy worked on?
Yeah, often you'll find in the books that I've worked on, it doesn't say, it just has Andy wrote bits or Andy did art, but you'll find that particularly when you move through, say, 2nd edition Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, I did a lot more on that edition than most of my credits would suggest. Every single text from some of the Bretonnian books onwards, I read end to end and gave notes on without getting credit because I was getting all of the text to do the cartography, for example. So I just got sent the text and then I quickly sent back notes if they had any mistakes, things that need to be fixed. And that's eventually why in later books, I got taken on as a developer because I was effectively doing much of the development job for about 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 books before that. So yeah, if it's a 2nd edition Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay book, I was probably involved somewhere.
And time, we're going with the Strigony Chieftainess.
Ooh, interesting. Okay, so that makes an immediate, obvious next poll, which is, are we going to go for river boats, those shabby, grey, long trains of boats that make their way through the old world water channels, or are we going for a caravan-based one? This is more your classic Romany, your traveling folk that move from place to place. But unlike the real world, and I'm going to be very careful with the word I use here because in the UK, the word gypsy is an actual type of Rom people. But in other parts of the world, gypsy is a slur. But we all know what gypsy means in terms of how it's often used to give you these ideas of colorful skirts and painted wagons. In the Warhammer world, they're not really that. These aren't gypsy folk moving from place to place. These aren't Romany and traveling folk that look the same. They tend to be in broken, shabby wagons or boats, river barges and equivalent, and they're not all brightly colored. They tend to be sort of gray and worn. Many of them bear scorches and burn marks from previous attempts to get rid of them. They are a shattered people and broken in so many ways. Now, that doesn't mean they're all like that. Some of them try to present themselves almost like a traveling fair, where color is used to try and hide the darkness and the despair that lies underneath. But most of the Strigony people are quite broken in the Warhammer world because not just of where they came from, but because of uncounted generations of persecution where they've been forced to move from place to place. So would you rather they were on boats and barges, basically a flotilla, or would you rather that they were a great caravan? Both tell very different stories and allow them to go to different places. If you are dealing with a flotilla, they will be in one old world nation only, because there's only so many places you can go in the rivers before you have to go to the high seas and sink if you're in any of their sort of boats. So we'll be discussing one old world nation only. If you do it on a caravan, they can travel anywhere. There is advantages and disadvantages to each.
The polls up for that, by the way. What kind of Strigony we're going to be going with? Antonio Ronza, I have a lot of fiscal money, but not digital. Well, unless it's in my pocket, I ain't doing it. Inquisitor Thomas, why didn't they spell it phonetical? Says the English speaker. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, there's nothing like looking at English and going, yeah, it's not so phonetical, is it?
It's a very stupid language.
It is.
Movie idea. Sale Marathi Village Thankful, VA Andy, Be'lakor and Starstic team up for a heist on Nagash and Czar. How does it end? And who does Ryan voice? I feel like I would feel pretty comfortable either doing Sale or Village. But I would say all I could say for certain is that Thankful would survive, Sale would betray, Village would get screwed over after thinking he was really smart, Be'lakor would fail, but ultimately push the team where they needed to be to get out successfully. Marathi would probably end up in the best place overall. And Skarsnik would probably seem like he gets kicked out or destroyed early, but actually had a very conniving wild card bullshit at like the third act.
Yeah, seems fair.
So, yeah, that would be very fun, though. I would enjoy that immensely. Getting gleeful, my summary of my experience of Vampire the Masquerade. Melpomene,
yeah.
It's a great ability. My Toreador locks people in place while our gargoyle goes to town on his friends. That sounds almost lewd. Moving on. Sean Souls.
It probably is.
Did the vampires rescue Andy from his Nurgle overlords? Can the vampires get Nurgle or Skaven diseases? So that's actually a fun question.
Good question.
In several cases, they can.
Yeah, you tend to find that the vampires themselves rarely are sick in the way that humans are, but they can carry diseases. Some of them carry multiple diseases, and it's been the root of more than one story and adventure. For example, there's an adventure for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th edition, where there is a vampire who has contracted a disease, and whenever she feeds, she gives it to everyone around her. So there's no actual disease in the local area. It's actually just a diseased vampire feeding them and leaving corpses that look diseased because of this. So the answer is yes, but they tend not to actually suffer the effects of the disease in the same way that mortals do. Often they're immune to all of the diseases, but they are carriers.
Yeah, there are some nasty magical diseases out in the world. Nurgle has actually like specifically unleashed particular plagues that only go after the undead because he really hates them. Sotek plays Marathi if it's live action. Only if it's live action, though. I'd have to shave my legs. I'm not doing that unless it's
live action. Your beard.
Yeah, not the beard. The beard stays.
Just the legs.
We'll just do what they did with Superman CGI.
Yeah, thanks. This has got weird.
Were River Strigony inspired at all by the Egyptians from Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials? Seems like
no, they weren't. I wrote the River Strigony before the Egyptians from Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials, before I read it. But I have read Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials and did enjoy the Egyptians from that. But no, they were created before I was aware of that, because I made the River Strigony for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition. Up to that point, they were a very simple port over of the various traveling folks that you find across Europe. And they were always described as being inside basically wagons going from place to place. And that got given extra detail in an article called Life and Death on the Reich for the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay Companion, one of the very first books for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition.
Yep, and that is time on the poll. And by
that was also the first words that I ever wrote that won an award.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. That's very exciting.
For me.
By a 2/3 majority, we have the River Strigony coming out on top.
Nice. River Strigony it is. Okay, so River Strigony are very much a peoples who make their way up and down the primary channels of water in the old world. The River Strigony are known in particular inside the Empire, because the Empire has by far the biggest water system that the old world has to offer. It's bigger even, arguably, than the Amazon in the real world. It's truly huge. The River Reich and all of its tributaries are just huge. Miles of uncounted miles of water, where entire communities can not just live, but can also hide. hundreds of boats can go missing on that particular river system and never be seen again. So, as River Strigony, they're probably going to be the Empire. I don't think we really need a poll for this because all the other places have got so little detailed about it that the Empire makes almost certainly the best place, unless Ryan wants to contradict that.
I can't. I mean, I'm willing to give them a poll of maybe like the Empire. Well, actually, what if we did like the major rivers of like which rivers they tend to?
Well, they're all the same river.
Well, you know,
because they all connect to each other. The
yeah,
only rivers that don't connect are in the north of the Empire, but all the rest of them, ranging from Kislev all the way down to Marienburg, all the way into the south of the Empire, all the way up to the Middle Mountains, are all the same river. The river Talabek is the same as the river Reich, and the river Strigony can go anywhere on all of that. And if we're dealing with a vampire lord, not just a vampire, but a vampire lord, at some point she'll have probably been through every last part of the Reich River basin.
Yeah, no, I don't think we need a poll on that one. There are no rivers Strigony on the river ruined. That is not a thing. We are not.
Because it's ruined.
We are not spawning that into existence on this particular day. Okay, so
I just oops, wrong one. There is some for a Bretonnian set of River Strigony. It works very well. They get persecuted as much in Bretonnia as they do in the Old World. There's far less connection between all the rivers in the Bretonnian side, though. So you tend to find if you do that, you almost limit the story you're telling. Where if you do it in the Empire, we can almost go anywhere. We can go to Nuln, we can go to Talabheim, we can go to Middenheim, we can go to Altdorf, we can go to Wolfenburg. We can, in fact, go to every single capital in the Empire, bar Salzmund up in Nordland, and it's on the same river system. They are all connected. So you can play a story that includes all of them if you wish to do so, or just one of them. So doing it in the Old World, the Empire, pardon me, gives you a bit more option.
Yeah. All right. So we have our base foundation. We're working with a Strigoi who hides and rules among the people of the Strigony. Someone that has been with it for a long, probably is one of them. Probably is a Strigony that was turned into a vampire by a former,
or possibly is emerging of the idea of somebody who has found the Strigony people from elsewhere, possibly because they were one of the younger ones that were back in.
Do you want to do an origin poll for this particular vampire?
Is a good place to begin, strangely enough. So do we want we know that she's old. We know she's old because we're going for a vampire lord here. We are not going for a young vampire who's only like anything from a few decades old to a century or so. We're dealing with someone who's at least 1,000 years old, and we can make a proper special character out of. This is the sort of character that you would definitely get in a game of Warhammer or something similar, which means we have to have a good set of traits for this character. And in terms of age, the oldest we can obviously go to is all the way back to Moorking. But, I mean, you could go even further if you wanted and say that they came from Lamia. And that would be a proper ancient.
So, okay. So if we have, let's do this. We have super ancient, which is Lamia.
Yep. Lamia.
From the city of Lamia.
Yeah.
Then we have from the Empire Strigos.
Super ancient.
Yeah. So now we're into not quite as ancient, but still pretty damn ancient of the Strigos Empire. Yeah. Our third option I think could be that she came from the Strigony people themselves,
the diaspora. So as they spread out afterwards and they are exiled, not so much exiled, driven out from their original city, and they try to find a home elsewhere. It could be from that period, which is still really far back in time.
Yeah, so the Great Exile or Diaspora. And then the fourth option, I think, would be they came from somewhere more. They came from a different old world kingdom.
I think you don't necessarily need to do that. You can say that they come from the River Strigony themselves. So we're talking old, probably a good 1,500 years or so, maybe even early Empire, but they were born into the Empire as probably one of the Strigony people, and are probably older than any of the von Karsteins, bar Vlad von Karstein himself and Manfred, who we all know in truth is actually freaking ancient, because they have ancient bloodlines all the way back to Lamia. So you've got your choices there. Truly super ancient, Lamia, down to ancient. They come from the city where vampires and humans work together, to really, really old, where they're part of the diaspora and traveled the old world first before she settled into becoming one of the traveling folk on the rivers, or she was born into the traveling folk and is one of them, which is quite a different story, but could be anything up to being as old as the empire itself almost.
Okay. From the. Okay, there we go. We got 4 options. The poll has started. Get your votes in. Get your votes in. Get your votes in. So do that while we get caught up on some super chat stuff.
Yeah,
so we
fun.
left off.
I like all of these options for different reasons, but do be aware, if you choose one, we will not be diving into the others. So if you want one that is, for example, born into the river stricken. No, let's go for a different one. Who was in, for example, Moorcane, doing the Moorcane thing? Vote for that, not for the Lamian one. Because if you go Lamia, we're going to be building a story from Lamia, not necessarily from Moorcane. So if you want Moorcane in there, do the Moorcane vote. If you want someone who was exiled and driven out, vote for that one. If you want one that's tied to the Strigony people themselves, then vote for that one. Don't vote for the top one thinking you'll get them all.
Yeah. Okay, so let me grab it. Ricky Chapman, the man himself. We would be remiss if we didn't mention that one of our players in our Wolfram campaign played Yvonne Karstein, who is Vlad's accountant. Truly a terrifying individual.
Nice one. In one of my campaigns, we had someone who was both Vlad and Manfred's lover, because she looked like a spit of both their former lovers, Neferata.
Ooh, spooky.
It was one of those rebirth stories. You know how you get that thing where you look like my previous lover from a last life.
I love the Mummy. That's a great movie.
It's 100% a vampire thing.
Ricky Chapman, give us a vampire run traveling showboat. We will get into how
we
they
could very
hide
well do that. It'd be quite fun, Ricky Chapman. I like that one.
Antonio, next month, Sotek, you will speak Italian. I swear this. I look forward to your $1,000 donation. Warzak's Working Mischief. Do the vampires ever worship any gods? I remember some blood dragons who joined Khorne the end times for survival. They follow the gash out of fear, but do they ever choose to worship a god?
Right, so end times.
So we're gonna throw the end times out because the end times is stupid. But have there been vampires that still worship gods? Yes. They're rare because for them it's purely a personal thing.
Yeah.
And some vampires hold on to more aspects of their former lives than others. And some of those will have been priests or other religious individuals for whom their religion is like a core part of themselves, and they were turned into a vampire against their will, for instance, and they remain as much as they can committed to what they were in life.
But it brings them no benefit at all because they're vampires, not mortals, and the gods really, really tend to not like them for a lot of very solid in-game reasons.
Yeah, they cannot manifest prayers or blessings, as far as we know.
Not in the slightest.
Except for that one time that what's her face did, Genevieve, but that was a different thing.
Never happened.
Yeah, never happened. Books. Getting Gleeful. Name suggestion: Ushkunya, in reference to Ushkunyaks, the Russian river pirates who operated in the 1300s and 1400s.
I used them in my old vampire game because why not? Yeah, they're kind of fun. Although, as is often the case with Warhammer, sometimes direct lifts like this work. Sometimes it just really doesn't. Sometimes it's nice to go in our own direction.
This is a little bit of a side, but Andy, I swear to God, Games Workshop watches Lorebeards. Did you see what happened recently when they updated their map?
No.
They got rid of the Romanovs.
Did you turn into the Bokas?
Yep, they're the Bokas now. They updated the map.
I swear.
They watched the show.
I'm quite right
they watched the show.
Quite right too. Attaching yourself to what's clearly the real world Romanovs is it's
weird.
a choice.
It was weird. It was a very old Hammer thing where they just didn't try.
Very much, particularly given just how much the Bokas had come to replace them everywhere from around about, I don't know, 2004 onwards. No, earlier.
Oh no, they're on to us. I mean, if they do watch the show for that, they're basically just getting like free editorial advice. So
me whinging.
If anything, we're the ones losing out on that transaction, but it's fine.
True fact.
All right, I'm going to give y'all just another minute here as I grab out some just kind of the random things. Michael, have a good night. But the Vampire Bloodline episode, please consider a way of lifting the vampire curse of perma killing a vampire. I need this for my game. We will discuss weaknesses for the vampire we're creating. But
I will say, consider a way of lifting the vampire curse, or perma killing vampires, neither of which I would prefer to do on a general basis. Always happy to do it on an individual basis. So an individual might somehow wheedle their way through to that sort of thing. But one of the core things about Warhammer is that the vampires are cursed. Why would we change a core rule of what makes them what they are? And on the other side, that when a vampire becomes a vampire, they're pretty much indestructible. Sure, you can kill them, give them final death even, but there's always ways to bring them back through ritual or some other weird, dark, nefarious means. I wouldn't like to write that as something else purely because it undermines one of the differences about Warhammer vampires and vampires in other settings.
Yeah, you would have to it would have to be like a massive divine moment. Like a very
or something.
Yeah, like the Necrarch that gets like obliterated by Myrmidia herself during one of her big invasions. Oh, it's still rubbing off on mine, but there were some people posting about it online. So I don't know if it's an update that's coming or if they're messing around with it. Because I saw some really good posts about it. Or maybe it might be in one of the new books, actually. Maybe that's what it's from.
Yeah, it's probably in the most recent book, which I've not looked at properly yet.
Yeah. Anyway, getting gleeful, something I've wondered for a while. What actually happens during a blood kiss? I've never seen it described, and you probably never will. It's
pretty much described in several places. Cut a long story short, you are drained until you've got almost nothing left. They give you their vampire blood. Job done. You're now a vampire. And when you become a vampire, you go through a period, not entirely unlike Anne Rice's period, where you go from being alive to being dead. And from that point forward, you are now a vampire. It's described in a couple of places. And
it's an exchange of blood.
Almost a lift from Vampire the Masquerade, which is in turn a lift from Anne Rice's description in The Interview with a Vampire et al.
Yeah, though hilariously enough, if GW's like asked specifically about it, and a lot of their more modern books, they always go really hard into the nobody knows, it's supposed to be a mystery. Shut up.
And particularly when you're dealing with some of the weirder bloodlines like the Necrarches. How exactly do you do it when blood is not necessarily a component of how they handle everything? There are different ways of handling it in general. Each of the bloodlines have got their own secrets.
Michael, so I'll just knock this real quick. So the gimmick to vampires, and this is a benefit to them as well as a horror to them, is that true death, permanent true death for them is seemingly impossible.
Yeah. It's also worth noting that in some of the vampire books, particularly if you go back to some of the older ones, you'll get those who are determined as both the truly dead, they're not quite dead, but these are active vampires, and they describe it as vampires who became vampires after they died, and vampires who were brought to the brink of death but never truly died. So Genevieve, for example, in the Genevieve books, she wasn't actually killed. She was brought down until she had very little blood left in her body and then turned into a vampire. Some other vampires, though, go far further. All their blood is taken. They are dead, and then they're given the vampire blood to bring a corpse back to life. So there's different versions of siring in just that set of books alone, and they come out with different versions. The ones who are killed often are the more monstrous, the truly awful vampires.
Yeah, that being said, when a lot of vampires die, like unless they had some notable followers, they're usually dead for good because bringing them back does take effort.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah, Lord Eisen, thank you very much for the update here. So it's updated on the version of the map they have for pre-order online.
Thanks for that one.
Thank you.
And good to know, and I broadly approve. I don't agree with many of the choices that they've made because some of the choices effectively invalidate other sources. And as we probably all know, I'm a great fan of trying to make as many sources as possible correct. And when you don't make a source correct, I like justifying why it's incorrect. So there's a couple of choices it's made which are just weird.
So our vampire, as we carry on here, is from Morcane / Stragos,
Nice.
the Empire of Stragos.
So that means our vampire has walked the halls of this supposedly idyllic vampire stroke human civilization from the past, the one that was eventually wiped out by greenskins, and was in turn almost certainly driven out in that cataclysm from that city. Now, we've said that she's not of the Strigony people because we didn't vote for that. That's cool. It was our second one, which works quite nicely because the River Strigony is where she's going to eventually end up. But she's also not someone who takes part in the exile or the diaspora because she hasn't had that as a vote. But again, quite a high vote at 22%. So possibly driven out and was with them to begin with and then became a loner by herself, doing something somewhere, and then eventually returning to the people that she once lived with and finding these shattered remnants of people and trying to bind them together in some part of the empire and eventually creating this new River Strigony set that we're going to be delving into. That seems to be a very loose path that makes sense. Do you agree, Ryan?
Yeah. Yes, I very much like the idea that this is a vampire that after the fall of Stragos, you know, as they fled out into the wilds, but managed to avoid becoming a ghoul queen or warping into one of the more monstrous aspects of Ushoran's lying like Ushoran himself did. Yeah. This is a vampire that remained in control, that remained capable enough and stealthy enough that they were able to feed on mostly living blood of humans to prevent the de-evolution. This is genuinely a very interesting vampire. Yeah. Because this is one that avoided the horrible de-evolution and curse of the majority of her siblings.
So we're dealing with a vampire here that has been feeding from the living for most of her existence. She still carries all of the curses of the Strigos in that she's almost certainly a hunchbacked, twisted character who, from most objective means, would be classified as, and I barely don't like using the word, but a hag or ugly or some other rather stereotypical term, but she is probably revered as a great prophet or a great access to the past by the Strigony people, who will view her as almost a doorway into what they once were. We possibly have a character who either wears the faded grandeur of the past, that's where she came from after all, or alternatively, because we didn't go for the Strigony queen example, spurns it. And in fact, recognizes either that they made a mistake in the past or that the past was ruined by others. So we could have a venge-filled character here. Someone who is looking to get revenge for what happened to her people and to her bloodline. Because after all,
she's Nana Strigoi.
Yeah,
she's
quite.
Nana.
The vast majority of her bloodline have become monsters. Truly awful creatures where she, whilst she may appear as a monster to many, is nothing in comparison to some of these ghoul queens and kings that exist out there who would as likely kill her as ally with her because they're no longer what they once were. People who may once have been her allies and her friends are now lost, completely lost. And they are lost because of what was done to them. So I think some type of revenge story might be worthwhile.
Okay,
here.
So I have a poll here I would really like to do.
Yeah.
I would love to do a poll on, because I like the direction we're going here. I love the tragedy and the bitterness that we have here. But I think that a fun poll people might enjoy would be voting on who she blames primarily.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. And I think that's exactly where I go next, because the story of the fall of Morcane is one that is shrouded in certain amount of mystery, particularly for those who were involved. They just know that the greenskins were the ones that perpetrated it. But ever since that event, there's various rumors from various folks. Was it Neferata who didn't like seeing the rise of another city to rival Lamia? Was it Nagash who didn't like the idea of vampires succeeding when, as far as Nagash is concerned, vampires suck because they keep betraying him, the dicks, even though he keeps on using them again and again and again like some sort of, I don't know, addict. Was it Nagash or was it, I don't know, what are you currently tapping together on your side, Ryan?
I've got 3 options. I've got the savagery of the greenskins. So holding the wall.
The obvious one is the greenskins.
Yeah. The second one is the curse of Nagash. So blaming when Nushoran put on the crown and Nagash's warping and manipulation of him. So a vampire that hates Nagash and blames him and his corruption for everything that happened.
Love that.
The third option is that she learns enough to blame Neferata's manipulations. So she blames good old Nephi. And the fourth option that could also be fun is she blames the weakness of humanity.
Humans. I love all of those. So that's 4 very clean options. Again, to summarize them, to make sure you've got them. Option number 1 is the greenskins. She takes it at face value. Greenskins freaking suck and they need to be brought to heel. Alternatively, it's
her lawhammer stocks are rising.
Alternatively, it's Nagash and the influence of Nagash that did it, and she eternally hates Nagash because of what she did to he did to her paradise. Alternatively, option number 3 is the Lamians, and in particular Neferata, who manipulated events from afar and caused the greenskins to attack. Or lastly, it's the failures of humanity themselves. Humanity fell, and humanity failed, unable to protect their peers, and thus they are the ones to blame.
Yeah, and think about this. So the poll's up, but think about what you're voting for, of like, what kind of events would she have been heavily involved in based on how you're thinking about her past? If she's someone that really deeply hates Nagash, she might have been a major ally of Sigmar during the Nagash crisis, where the Strigany people actually showed up in a history that's kind of been lost to time to fight against Nagash, to harry him, to harass him. That she has made allies at the most important moments? Or is she more focused on the greenskins? Was she there at the Battle of Blackfire Pass? Has she participated in holding back the worst was? And there's a story somewhere about how, like, when Gorbat Ironclaw came through the Empire, she defended the Strigany people against them. And the rivers were actually a major battleground that we are not heard well about the history of the Empire. Was it that, you know, that she focuses on instead of protecting the Strigany from the manipulations of the Lamians, and that they're a unique culture that has a very unique view on how to deal with various types of vampires because of that background? Or does she hate the people that she rules over, the people that she relies on because they were weak, and she blames them for everything that she's lost? There's a lot of really interesting potential options scattered around here.
I like all of these for different reasons.
Let's see. We've got oh nope, yep, we definitely have some super chats I need to get caught up on. Biofled. Can this group of Strigany be known as the Inlet Carousing Peoples? That must be a reference to something I'm too stupid to know.
I'm thinking the same thing on my side.
Sorry, Darius. Sorry I'm late. Danny DeVito Strigoi. Done. You are indeed too late. But we did get a Strigoi, so you know, you're at least on that. Inquisitor Thomas, can we give her some sort of relationship with Mother Ostankia? I feel that would be a fun dynamic. You know, if we have enough time, we might have some like polls and stuff on like characters she might have encountered. The idea that her peoples have interacted with the peoples of the Hags is actually not that unlikely.
And it's also worth noting as well that the river system of the old world that pops into the Empire goes all the way into Kislev. So, yeah, not that unlikely either.
Oh, the insane clown posse. Thank you. No, we will not be doing that. Thank you for catching that, whoever that was. Getting gleeful. She could feed on those that try to wrong the Strigany she travels with. She could disguise herself as a haggard old wise elder, but goes at night goes out and hunts with monstrous agility and strength. Well, that'll depend on what kind of option y'all end up with. If she blames humanity, she's not going to defend them from shit.
Yeah, agreed.
Chris, when Manfred Fenn gained the powers from the other bloodlines, what exactly did he gain? I understand he gained something from them, but what exactly? So, vaguely, the book's a little vague about it, but it basically suggests that he eliminated many of his own personal weaknesses. So, like, many of the weaknesses of his bloodline to things like sunlight, or particularly like personal failings he might have had, like things like silver or blessed things, became lesser and lesser as he made himself stronger and stronger. But he also supposedly acquired powers of the other bloodline. So things that they're more well known for doing. So like where von Karsteins are known for being good at like turning into a wolf or a swarm of bats, he may have been good at learned how to turn well into a cat like Lamians do, like a big cat. Or maybe he learned he learned more mastery over ghouls like the Strigoi duel. Or he learned he became faster and just stronger from a blood dragon and stuff like that.
All of that done.
Scylla now, has a vampire tried the blood kiss on a Chaos Warrior? Yes, and they have succeeded. Or failed. It depends on the individual case, but yes, it has happened.
Yeah. And it's also one of the few ways that you can potentially take a soul that's lost and damned and arrest it into the material plane, meaning that the Chaos Gods no longer can access it.
Can we make it extra grim and go with the top two? Tell you what, if someone drops us, let's say a $50 super chat, we will take the top two options instead of only the top option.
Holy crap, that would make for an interesting story.
I'll give you 5 minutes, but 5 minutes, we will take the top two options instead of only the top one. We can manage that. We can manage that.
We can make that work.
MTD, I really need the ultimate bloodline feud and catfight between this lady and Neferata. Monstrous on the outside and noble on the inside versus beautiful on the outside and horrific on the inside vibes. That is
a classic story. Quite like that, MTD. There's something in that, I think.
Yeah, that is a classic. That would be spicy. That would be spicy.
Yeah, that would be potentially very spicy. Quite like that.
The Exile one, I hope it's Neferata. Having a group of mortals with vampire knowledge fighting against vampires and thralls sounds really cool. It does.
It really does. It means that we might end up having a bunch of vampire hunter Strigony, which might be an unexpected outcome given where we started this stream.
The Red Magma one. I can imagine she was turned after she had a few children, then turned, but during the burning of Morcane, her descendants perhaps fled with her and began to feed their blood to her to keep her sane, which she later became addicted to. And now she could I wouldn't say only, but prefers to feed on her descendants.
Yes, to feed on vampires. One of the things that keeps her going, while many of her children have perhaps devolved into the Strigony that we know from elsewhere. So, I mean, the Strigoi that we know from elsewhere. So what you could have is an almost a weaker leader and a far stronger bunch of kids who are the more monstrous vampires that we know from that bloodline normally. So an interesting mixture of ideas.
There's a really interesting idea we can explore. We'll get to that in a little bit. There's something there we could actually play around with.
Yeah, there's definitely something in that.
Super Urlach. I mean, if she hates Neferata, she could have been somehow involved with that whole Vampires Arena incident. Yes, Katerin the Bloody, who is a perfect example of why vampires not really being able to die eternally really fucking sucks in the grand scheme of things. Because when you get eternally imprisoned in true ice, sucks. You're just stuck there forever. All right, I think that's enough time. So wow, that was actually a very interesting spread, but by a majority, though an interesting spread, she knows Neferata brought down Strigos and she's pissed about it.
Okay, so that means that we're dealing with a Strigoi who is sharp, intelligent, vengeful, looking to bring down the Lamians and their great network that is spread across the old world. So traveling from place to place to
wait. Came in at the last second. Well, yep. Okay, we'll do it. So
we'll take it. The Exile. That was me. So let me amend. let me amend. So knows that Neferata was involved, but also knows that Nagash looked for this to be the outcome. This is our anti-undead queen in some respects. She is the one who will be raising up her children, both on the vampire side, who, if we go with the story we've suggested already, are also the ones she feeds from most, and most of them are monsters. She has to watch her children become devolved monsters after she sires them, which is awful. Imagine you get a favored one and it just gets worse and worse as the decades go by until eventually it becomes a monster and their mother has to look on and just shed a blood tear. It's awful. I quite like that as a dark tale, but they're willing to sacrifice themselves for their mother who turns them into this so that she may better fight off against not just Neferata and all of those Lamian vampires, but the entirety of Nagash's plan for the world.
Okay, so, and just for anyone that might be listening, we did get Exile 1, thank you very much, coming in with the generous tip to make sure that she blames Nagash and Neferata.
That's why I said both.
Yeah. Just to make it clear for anyone who's listening. So there's a couple really things I like about this. So one of the things that's core to the Strigony people that I actually really love is that the Strigony are often treated by a lot of the people of the Empire as these like outcasts, nasty rural folk that don't follow any rules, and they're awful and they're thieves and blah blah blah.
And attached to vampires.
Yeah, and attached to vampires. But I like the idea that a lot of it is that it's Lamian propaganda. It's part of this shadow war of the Lamians manipulating the so-called civilized folk of the cities, manipulating their cattle to push out and to oppress the Strigony people. Because Neferata knows what the Strigony are in this little AU, is that the River Strigony are actually the wise folk about knowing how to keep the vampires at bay, and the Lamians cannot have that. So they have orchestrated a brutal campaign.
So how about then, if we want to bring the Strigony into this, we can actually have, perhaps not far from the time of Sigmar, the Strigony nursing our vampire back into sanity. Because they carry many of the secrets from Lost Moorking. And they find her broken, twisted, having fed on the worst that the world has to offer, barely surviving, and nurse her back to health and bring her back to sanity. So unlike many of the bloodline that she comes from who have become true monsters, she has been saved by her people. And in turn, as she then finds out what happened, everything that fell back over the course of the next so many centuries, she begins a campaign to bring the Lamians down, and a campaign to effectively remove Nagash from the equation. We've got ourselves possibly a nice gap in time there between the fall of Murkane and her arrival in the old world that we can almost gloss over with some vague paragraphs of nice typing where she became the monster and she has come past that point and returned herself. But it took something that ends up being a big sacrifice. It took the blood of other vampires to bring her back. And that's something that she's had to hold on to for the last 2,000 years of her existence.
I actually love the idea as well of there being this system where she encourages her children, which I would imagine for her, having to turn her own Strigony children into vampires so that she's able to feed from them. That's probably seen as a deep honor, but also a horrible tragedy. Like being selected to do it is the highest honor you can receive. So for the human, it's like, this is incredible, but for her, it's horrible. It is.
You become a primary soldier in the night. You become a core of what allows them to continue surviving on a nightly basis from various attacks from outside entities. But equally, you are going to devolve, and one day you're going to become a monster. And this is something that you willingly take on. For the people.
That's so cool, because I can imagine it's the ceremony. She doesn't feed often, but when she feeds, it's when one of them reaches that point where they're lost. They can't come back. They're a true monster, and the Strigony know that's when they have to catch them, bring them back to her, and there's basically a ritual where she takes it back. She takes the gift back by taking all of their blood. Maybe she is the vampire that her unique gift someone was saying earlier, she brings true death to her children.
To her
she
children.
takes it all back. But it's
and it's not so much that she brings true death because she kills the vampire in a way that's different, and thus she could do it to any vampire. It's that what she's doing is she is taking back what was gifted.
Yeah.
So if she was trying to, for example, give true death to, say, Neferata, wouldn't work because Neferata is entirely self-created as vampires go. If she tried to do it to Manfred, wouldn't work because she's not Vashanesh. The whole thing would just fall apart. But when it comes to our own kids, they're both given the great honor to be one of her kids. It'll be almost entirely Strigony, one assumes, but they are aware that they're heading towards a doom, but it's a doom that they accept because they know they'll be going back to their mother.
Yeah, and I love that for her in particular, because I could see there being this interesting cultural dichotomy of that younger Strigony see it as something to aspire to, something to seek out and desire more than anything. But the older Strigony know it's a curse, and that she hates it because she has to watch her most beloved children, the ones that are given this honor because they're trusted. She knows she's going to have to watch them devolve into. It's basically like knowing one of your children needs to defend your home, and you're going to give them a weapon that'll do it, but it's guaranteed to basically give them monstrous Alzheimer's. And there's no and the only way to put them down at the end is you have to personally kill them.
Yeah, that's the only way. It's horrible. It's great. It's very Warhammer, and we love it when Warhammer goes dark, grim, and a little bit perilous, and it's doing exactly there. It's awful. She is a bleak character, someone who has lost everything from her youth, someone who was nursed back to health by the Strigony people, who almost worship her as a goddess, and a goddess that requires vampire blood to continue to survive and to continue to keep her sanity. A goddess that must bestow her blessings upon her children, not just to protect her children, because these other Strigoi vampires are capable of great feats of strength and everything else to protect her people, and feed her, obviously, but ultimately a sacrifice that goes full circle and she reclaims their blood. I really like this. This is quite fun.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to catch up on some super chats real quick, and then we'll figure out our way to another poll, because I've got some other things that we need to do some polls on. So we've got Kitty Geethel, along with hating Neferata, she could also hate her manipulations to the Empire and how they continue to oppress her people. Yeah.
I really like this, and I think many of the stories of the character is going to be going from place to place to place, hunting out Lamian agents and either bringing them to the light or otherwise causing problems, which in turn has the Lamians persecuting this group hard, doing everything that they can to make the Strigony look like they are the worst people they can have, to the degree that I think that it's quite possible that we're not dealing with a single Strigony flotilla here. What we're dealing with is multiple groups of River Strigony, one of which holds the root, carries the godhood, if you will, at its very center, and a whole bunch of others spread everywhere. And the Lamians are trying to find the root of the problem. They don't know which one she's hiding in. They don't know where she is. And they've spread everywhere across the Empire and possibly beyond. And that makes it tough for the Lamians to pick them down. So the Lamians have gone black carpet bomb here. All of them are bad. Every last one of them must be hunted down and killed. And whilst some parts of the Empire do exactly that, just basic humanity means many of them don't.
Yeah, one thing I actually really love about this is this would expose some interesting weaknesses of the Lamians, of how the Lamians traditionally have to rely on more of like those civilized city type cultures, those more like stationary types that they need to build up and have these like nobles that they can more easily manipulate, or they manipulate through particular cultural veins that the Strigony, thanks to the guidance of their mother, are practically immune to. The Lamians just don't have those easy cultural ends, and when they try to sneak in among the Strigony, it doesn't work.
Yeah, perfect. Love that. So we've got ourselves a pretty solid base there. Anyway, let's carry on. We got diverted by an awesome chat.
She's the Shadow Queen of all the Strigony. That is a way you could
That's definitely a way you could do it, but I think we're looking to not make her a queen of all of them. Definitely not a ghoul queen, for example. But she is definitely in the Empire, the core vampire who is manipulating the Strigony to her own ends.
Yeah,
Now, that might sound
especially-
harsh, but I think she's doing it in conjunction with the Strigony. The Strigony are, in some respects, probably empowering her and pushing her to do this as much as she, in turn, is using the people to reach the end goals that they want.
Yeah, one thing I would actually find very interesting as well is if you think about it, the Lamians. So when like her Strigony agents successfully find a Lamian, they kill her. This actually kind of ends up in like a classic Warhammer Fantasy roleplay, the enemy within situation, where the party of heroes kills the noble vampire woman who's manipulating a threat to the city, but to the public, it just looks like some Strigony like bandits came in and murdered a noble woman.
Yeah,
like it's a
and
bad
I think that
look.
works really well, particularly if we tie that up with the other part of her story as well, where she might be drinking them dry too. So not necessarily this is what always happens, but perhaps her kids are taught to find the Lamians and drink them dry, because if they're drunk dry, there's very little chance they are ever coming back.
Yeah,
effectively consuming them.
Yeah, which would be fun because that would also make her a boogeyman to vampires.
Yeah,
of like if she's an expert at like she drains every drop, and then the Strigony take the bodies and they're never found again because they know the river's like nobody else.
Let's go worse. They eat them.
Ooh, that's cool.
Because this is the bloodline of giant monsters that consume. So they don't just drink them dry; they literally eat them bit by bit through their arms as they scream. It's a horror story as they tear them bit to bit and they consume them. A feast of big vampire monsters upon this.
Oh, that's such a cool play on the Strigoi too. Of that, like Strigoi, we think about the ghouls of humans eating humans, but these are the Strigoi of vampires eating vampires. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah,
that is fucking awesome.
Anyway, super chats before we get I think our next poll should probably be, though, because we're getting a really strong story for Lamia. The next poll should maybe be what's the Nagash story.
Yep. Antonio, in the end, she sleeps with Felix. Of course, why not?
Like 12 times.
Sure, of course. Getting gleeful. What instead of true death, when she takes it back, part of their essence stays with her and deep in her mind if she can feel it. So what?
I think that's quite cool. And yeah. I think there might even be some pretty horrific parts where maybe she can speak with voices of the past. And she can speak about the things that happened 2,500 years earlier, because she's not just recalling what one of her children thought, say, for example, during the time of Sigmar. They're literally speaking through her. And maybe she's even somewhat of a community leader because of this, because they can talk to their ancestors. So those who have been called back, so that she becomes part of the core.
I have an idea.
Strigony people.
Yeah, so an idea. So I will full on say I'm stealing this from Fullmetal Alchemist, but I still love it.
I love Fullmetal Alchemist, so I'm behind it already.
So for anyone that's ever watched it, the idea of the Philosopher's Stones, when you're dealing with the characters, like, spoilers, but it's an old show, you should have watched it by now. But characters like Hohenheim and Father, is that they've got the souls of all the people that makes up their Philosopher's Stones inside of them, who are just screaming in madness, but they can talk to them. And one of the characters over thousands of years talks to every single one of them. What I love for her would be the idea of that whenever she's consumed one of her own children, they're with her forever. And that whenever she could, and we talked about how she only consumes them once they've devolved to like their true monstrous point. And I would love the idea whenever she goes through that ritual and has to eat one of her children, there's like a period of time. This is one of her weaknesses where she's basically almost incoherent and weak because she's having to sort through the madness and get them, talk them back to where she can actually extract memories from them. Like imagining.
Yeah, I think there's a really nice story here for the bloodline, which is that the bloodline special trait is that they can consume vampires and not just access their memories, but manifest those vampires, which means you could have a really fun story with one of her kids who has consumed, for example, a Lamian, who sneaks in and speaks with that Lamian's voice.
Ooh,
directly to another Lamian, whispering in the shadows, and then out comes the monster as the Lamian comes in, and it's not her sister. It's not the one who trained back in the Silver Pinnacle. It's a fuck off huge vampire who comes in and goes, and I'm here for you. That's super fun.
Yeah, I love that because that could also like be their particular form of madness as well. Where like her children and her are very prone to looking like they're just talking to themselves, because it's just all these different voices talking, and if they can't sort it, if they can't stay on top of it, they just go fucking mad.
Yeah, I think that works. I think it's always nice to have some form of narrative comparison as well. So let's dial up the discomfort of it and have all of her bloodline are doomed to go mad, are doomed to lose themselves as they degenerate into these mad creatures, where she herself is seemingly immune for whatever reason that we build for what the Strigony did to her. And she's sitting there with the ancestors of the Strigony within her, all with their competing desires, basically talking to her rather than driving her mad, and her in the center of it, trying to get revenge for the Strigony, trying to bring down the Lamians, trying to get revenge for Murkane, trying to stop Nagash and everything that he's doing, but having the wisdom of almost 2,000 years worth of Strigony leaders that she's managed to take in herself, whilst the rest of them are just slowly going mental because of what they can do.
Yeah, which would also be so tragic because she's the only sane one in an ocean of madness.
She gets to watch them slowly, but if she's mad as well, it makes the story less tragic. So allowing her to keep her sanity and cope with it makes it a slightly bigger awfulness, I suppose.
Yeah, because that you could just imagine there are scenes where like she has a son or a daughter that's like screaming to her to help them and explain or try to, and she's tried so many times. Like she tries every time and it never works. Like it's like having a kid that's got some horrible problem and you want to help them and you just can't, which is gut wrenching.
And then on the other side, you can also have, someone who's lost their memories of like 4 or 5 generations back, and they can talk to their great grandfather.
So there's like a positive.
Yeah, there's positives there as well. And in the same way that there's positives that the vampires of other lines who have been consumed by her children are similar. They're able to use those to gain access to intelligence. So it's not that they're great gatherers of secrets or spies. It's that they are consumers of secrets and spies. Meaning that they know much more about the Lamians than most Lamians might know about other Lamians, because they're such a secretive group. They know what they're up against because they have consumed many of them, but each of these consumptions ends up being lost because very few of her bloodline last for more than a century or so. So they have to make use of the information that they have while they have it, and then it's lost, and they now need to track down another one and get it from them to get more recent knowledge. So their method of gaining access to their enemies is by eating them.
Yeah, that's fucking fantastic.
It's awful.
All right,
I love it.
Yeah, okay, we're gonna grab a couple more super chats, and we're gonna hop into the next poll.
Cool.
Mr. Co-Breaking. She likely doesn't care if Empire citizens get hurt. She can get her hands on Nephron's agents. I can't imagine she'd care very much for Empire people at all, to be honest.
Yep, agreed.
Like those northern
the way
barbarians.
Empire treat her, the Empire's folk are basically just Lamian agents.
Yeah, as far as she's concerned. Brock 6000, maybe she's diminutive like the medium from Poltergeist, shrunken from losing herself, but then more like her old self as she feeds. I imagine she would be very much, I like the idea of her being kind of this withered old crone looking figure that is deceptively fucking terrifying if she needs to be.
I'd say Brock. My instincts for a good story go there, but my instincts for a good Warhammer miniature go elsewhere. Because ultimately, are we building a Warhammer character that would look fucking cool in the battlefield, okay, with this very small Strigoi in comparison to the rest of the monsters that are her children? Or do we go for one that actually looks impressive in the battlefield in her own right? And that could be small, but with a host of other things along with her. I would be less keen with too small, because it'll end up looking like on the battlefield like a halfling, and that'd be weird.
Yeah, I like the idea of her more looking like an old wise woman type figure. That's just a very old woman that's like carried on, like if they have to go on land for a battle or whatever. Like normally she's up
palanquin or
like a palanquin, where she's carried by her children. They literally bear her to where she needs to go.
Is all hunched back and maybe one eye bigger than the other, giving the idea of the all-seeing eye that allows her to see through the perceptions of all the other children that she's absorbed over the course of the last too many thousand years, stories they build.
Yep. And you could take that like that trope that like the Strigony talk about things like the evil eye, and that she like literally has it. Like she wields that. Inquisitor Thomas. So in Vampire the Masquerade terms, Ravnos / Banu Hakim mixture.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say there's. Actually, no. Yeah, kind of. No, there's a lot of Nosferatu in there as well.
Stephen Lucas, with the pyramids of Queen Eat Vampire, make her stronger with each return. Ooh,
I would suggest if she's only taking from her own bloodline because she's avoiding the curse of going mad effectively by taking in the other bloodlines, the answer is that she's not getting more powerful. Her children do, but they go mad in short order. So I would suggest it's split. Now, could she do it to another bloodline? Oh, yeah. She wants to, as basically the ultimate sacrifice for herself, eat Neferata. That's her goal. She wants to consume her slowly and inflict upon her all the pain that Murkane went through at the hands of Greenskins. She wants to do that. That will be ultimately the end of her life. She's done. I'm done. I've eaten her. I win. But beyond that, she just won't, because she's aware that if she does, then the madness that afflicts the rest of her bloodline will almost certainly settle upon her. So, yeah, I think there's not a pyramid of power, so to speak, with her at the very top. Instead, it's she has been both bestowing her blood and taking it back over the course of countless centuries. And through that time has grown more powerful purely because of her age and constantly feeding on vampiric blood anyway. Whereas the other children are often spiking hard in power, becoming big monstrosities, truly awful, filled with memories of mostly Lamians, because that's whom they hunt, but sometimes other bloodlines too. And then they are lost as those particular memories slowly but surely slip away as their bodies, their material forms can't cope with it anymore. And those vampires, completely lost, are sucked back into the original host, assuming they can get to it in time. And she doesn't get all of their memories. She just gets the memories of the vampire that she consumes.
Yeah, and that's fun because that still gives us that really strong Strigony vampire hunter culture of that. Not only do they hunt vampires because they're the enemies, but they have to hunt their own kin if they go too mad and they're too far away, and they have to go track them down.
Yeah, because they also don't want to lose the memories of their kin. Yeah. So it's more than just we're trying to, bring back the dangerous one back into our fold or anything like that. They're quite literally trying to reclaim the lost memories and bring them peace, because when they return to Mother, they get their peace back and they get to sit within the Mother.
That's so fun as well, because that would mean that they're still very anti-other vampire hunters. Because if other vampire hunters kill their kin, they'll lose them. Like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That for them would be a culturally devastating blow.
Yeah, and no matter how monstrous they are, they need to go back to Mother, and they might kick up somewhat of a fight, but that's just part of the process.
Yeah, which would still give us that thing of why they're so reluctant, refuse to work with people like witch hunters and all these other groups that you'd be like, well, wouldn't they be allies? No, they're not, because they don't trust them.
Yeah, agreed. Works really well.
Abysswalker, the Reaper strain vampires from Blade 2 is awesome. I like it.
Yeah, me too. I really like
generous tip. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really like, just to say a little bit, Blade 2, but largely because it so clearly is influenced by Vampire the Masquerade, so much more than Blade was before it, which was largely just the Marvel cartoons. Timothy Bradstreet, one of the core artists from Vampire the Masquerade, was brought in to help with a lot of their concepting, and it really shows.
Yep. Okay. We got 3 more, and then we're hopping in. Well, we'll do 2 more, and then we'll go. Cole Patterson, is she not sound too much like Orion? No, and here's why. Orion is a god that takes that a mortal elf avatar basically willingly is the host for, but all of the prior hosts are said to be in there as well. Whereas this is an old Nana type figure who is purely dominant. But she has all of her children within her. And she has to take them in through a very horrible, heartbreaking, soul-consuming process that would break anyone weaker, but she's just made of iron. Whereas Orion is, you are turning into a entity that you kind of, your personality sort of influences, but ultimately it is a god taking on a mortal avatar. Whereas this is someone that was human, and through sheer iron will has survived unspeakable tragedies and traumas, and has come out the other side as the leader of a people who is able to lead her children, but there is a deep and dark price.
Yeah.
There is a tiny, there's a few little similarities, but I would say they're very, very different.
Yeah, I mean, there's often when we're dealing with fantasy stories, there's a lot of similarities between them, but the individual stories we tell give them each their unique punch. And this really is very different to Orion in terms of where it's punching and the story it's attempting to tell.
And then last one before we're going to do some more votes and talk about some more stuff. Bojan Petrov in Chainsaw Man, if a devil eats another devil, they take their power. Yes, which is a very cool concept of Chainsaw Man.
It's a very common concept as well of Vampire the Masquerade, where you've got diablerie, where if you diablerize another vampire, then suck it dry and take its soul into you, you gain its power. And aspects of that have drifted over into Warhammer as well.
Yeah, though, like Andy said, something I like, a thing that could prevent our vampire from getting, like, she would still be immensely powerful, but something that could prevent her from just being like, oh, well, she's just God, is that a lot of what she's consuming is simply being used to keep the madness at bay, as opposed to, like, powering up.
Yeah, I think she's clearly going through some sort of almost frequent, repeated, almost religious rituals with the Strigony people who saved her from her earlier madness some 2,000 years earlier.
Yeah, so Nagash, because Nagash is looming over the horizon, and we got to talk about him. So because of some generous tips and stuff in her earlier and the way the poll went, we've also made it where she blames Nagash very heavily for the fall of Morkane, which is reasonable.
Very reasonable.
Yeah, because for those that don't know, Ushoran was doing a fairly good job leading Morkane, and eventually, though, because he sought more wisdom, more power, more strength, he put on the crown of Nagash, and over a period of time, it changed him badly. He lost that fight, essentially. And it warped him into something much different, and
arguably warped the entire bloodline.
Yes. Yeah. And Nagash has, to be fair, never been a friend of the vampires. Ever.
Yep.
Ushoran didn't like him. None of them liked him. And so for her to have borne witness to that, and who could say what her relationship to Ushoran was, whether she was turned from him directly, which seems likely given how strong she is. It's like, was she a lover? Was she a friend? Was she simply a competent general or warrior? But nonetheless, she was close to him, and she saw him twisted and devolved and made more monstrous by this power he thought to use to protect his people. So this is a character who wouldn't fall for the classic ploy of, oh, Nagash was weak, I'll take Nagash's power from him. I'll allow, Manfred von Karstein, who didn't know Nagash well enough to be like, oh, well, I'm going to just steal his power. She's like, the idea, would she try to eat Nagash? I would say no, because she knows better.
Yeah.
She knows what a threat he is, and that he is the fucking worst. She would have been there for the Battle of the River Reich, or especially because it's on a fucking river. Like, you can imagine the Strigony people played a role that is very conveniently forgotten, has been erased from the histories by the Lamians manipulating Empire's history. Of the Strigony people were there. They helped fight. They were core in the fight against Nagash, but that's forgotten. Maybe there were even vampires that helped fight against Nagash that Sigmar was like, these guys are great. That has been forgotten by history. That's been twisted by history, which would be a really cool thing for Sigmarites to have to wrestle with if they learned that there were vampires that Sigmar loved and was like, these guys are our allies. But I think the important thing would be to focus on here would be what, obviously she opposes Nagash, but I think how that would manifest is something that we can maybe try to do down to a vote of, is it the specific element? Like, because here's the thing. If her nature of Nagash is ultimate, like if she sees him as the ultimate threat, that could allow for us to have a character that is very nuanced, in that there would be times where she has to work with forces like Nephiron and the Lamians, who also hate Nagash, who also actively try to oppose his resurrection. Or does her personal grievances with the Lamians supersede her opposition to Nagash? Is she willing to allow her hatred of other vampires to be stronger than her hatred of the Lord of Undeath himself? Like, how extreme? What's the tension here?
Yeah, I agree. We need a story. We've got a pretty strong story on the Lamian side, and if we're to sum it up very quickly, she knows that Neferata was responsible. She got brought back to sanity, and in however she managed to get that knowledge, she has ever since then been working to bring Neferata to her end. The Nagash story is similar in that she knows that the influence of Nagash effectively sent her father mad and the rest of his bloodline mad. And if it wasn't for the Strigony, she would be mad also. If it wasn't for her unique way of both eating and drinking from other vampires, and I imagine she eats other vampires as part of her sanity maintaining process. She's constantly on the brink of losing it, and she's constantly consuming to keep herself going, in the same way that other vampires are constantly on the brink of devolving into beasts that are just hungry, and the blood keeps that beast at bay. The red rain, as it was referred to in some of the older stories, that where the red anger just takes over.
Okay.
So we've got a clear Nagash, but what's the story of what she's doing when she's come out?
I got an idea for a poll. So the core Nagash conflict. So what is the core of why she hates him so much? And I've got like 3 options in my head, and hopefully Andy can give us a 4th and hopefully restructure what I'm about to say into something nicer sounding. So the first I would say is that she loved Ushorin.
Yeah.
Like, she was very, very close. Maybe she was his lover. Maybe she was almost like, she could have been like a mother figure to him,
or a mother figure to him. Perhaps she cared for him rather than the classic story would always be go with lover, but perhaps she was more of a caregiver. She Soren was losing himself at various points to his fears, his concerns, and she was someone that effectively chilled him out, man. Sat him down and went, everything's okay, we can get through this. A counselor type, a mother type, someone who is there to provide a coolness when his own anger or his own issues might be rising to the fore, or his own doubts, his own fears.
Yeah, it could be. I would love the idea that she was almost like a not a nursemaid, but she was that.
Maybe that's where the poll should start off. Before we determine Nagash, have a very quick poll on what's the relationship.
That's great.
Okay, so let's get that out of the way first. And the first most obvious one would be lover. I may have just dissed this, but I only dissed it because it's the obvious option. Doesn't mean it's not a really good one, particularly when we deal with the entire bloodline and they're not normally considered to be the lover type. There is nothing wrong with us dialing into a story where that's the case. And a love that's now lost because of what he has become. That's fun. A potential story as well, should they ever meet. Or alternatively, a caregiver, someone who needs to look after, protect, and somehow sort not just him, but his entire bloodline, which is one of the reasons why she's chasing after Nagash. Have you got a third option for what she might be?
Daughter. He was a father to her. Like
a father figure, rather literal father, I think makes more sense. But yeah, a father figure, someone who is very much
in darkness,
who was instructing her, taking her as potentially a young woman and instructing her how to be something bigger and better than what she once was. We're probably looking at a story of someone who has been uplifted from what they were into a better position as a mortal, and then from immortal to immortality, where he can continue to be a father figure to her.
Yeah, I would say the last option would be that she was essentially she saw him as her general, her king, her like deep. It's not as strong.
Let's go to the father figure, because we could build that into father figure very easily. I think
those 3 options are good then. I think those 3 options are good.
Well, if we're looking at a host of relationships, we've got love, we've got care, we've got respect, the father figure. Perhaps another one is they are comrades in arms. They are 2 people who both think alike. They occasionally disagree, because all friends do, but they accept the differences in the other. So instead of looking at him as, this distant father figure or someone who's got to be looked after. It's literally my best mate in many respects. Someone that they sat almost side by side, potentially not as lovers, but not potentially necessarily as co-rulers either, but most certainly as people who both were heading in the same direction.
Pulls up. I think we have some fantastic options there.
Yeah, me too. I think this really will characterize her as well deeply. So please do get this one voted up. I'm very interested to see where this one lands.
Yep, and while we're doing that, we can get caught up on some super chats here. Getting gleeful, Neferata has claimed the heart of the empire, but we control its veins and arteries. They say in their cities, but all those cities. They sit in their cities, but all those cities sit on rivers. We know where they hide, but we could be anywhere. That's great.
Loving that.
That's a god tier quote.
Love it.
That's a god tier quote from Nana to somebody. Eat Neferata to have more power to oppose Nagash. I think for her, eating Neferata would almost kind of be an end state.
Yeah, I think it might be the end game because that'll be the point where she won't come back. No matter what rituals are conducted at that point, she will be gone.
Yeah, I think for her, that would be you will take what is left of me after I do this, and you will entomb me somewhere where I will never be found.
Yeah.
When Neferata can never be brought back.
Yeah, because by doing so, it keeps Neferata down. And until she's dead, Neferata could never come back.
No.
Yeah, fun story in that.
A certain Tomb Queen would be very interested in the info of these Riverfolk cap. Yeah, there would be a very natural, interesting relationship between her and a lot of different forces that oppose vampires because she could be an ally, but she also is one of them. And many of the forces that oppose Neferata are very black and white when it comes to their focus on vampires. Like Khalida would not Khalida would be very difficult to forge an alliance with. Very difficult. Jonathan King. I can imagine her mindscape as a massive council chamber where all the different family lines are leading back to her at the center. That would be a very cool visual. Her mind.
Yeah, I think that's pretty freaking cool.
Like being like some great hall where all the family members hold council and argue and deliberate and like it's just a whole thing.
So just to interrupt for a moment, where about a third of you have voted, and the vote is exceedingly close. Comrade in Arms and Cared for Him are they're almost arm in arm.
Yeah, this is the closest poll we've had so far. So if you're going to
Father Figure is really close behind that as well. Lover of Ashorin is pretty much kicked out, so you voted for that. You're not going to get it, but those other three are super close. So if you're watching and you do have an opinion here, get your vote in now because these last few votes are going to swing it.
Pusoyu, holding several consciousnesses in her head at one time and looking at topics from several different points of view could be a huge advantage in planning schemes, like an internal council. Reminds me of the vampire from Blindsight.
Yeah, agreed completely. This could be something that brings her an extraordinary advantage, and we make her a super fun character to write. So if you were a novelist bringing this character to life, there's all sorts of different voices that you could bring to the table. Indeed, she would probably be at least 20 characters with her as the core voice between them all, with old chieftains and sneaky folks and barbarian warriors and old kings and whatever else there might be, all held within her, all of whom can trace their bloodline directly back to her when she was a mortal all that time before, because these are her direct descendants.
Yeah, I also this would allow for some very fun character dynamics as well, especially like in a role play scenario where if you have a PC that's talking to her and she knows them horrifically well because their ancestors are in her. Like imagine you're talking to your grandma and she knows everything you're going to say before you say it because she's heard it 100 times from your whatever ancestor. And she's constantly just like, oh, you talk just like such and such. You're like, I don't know who that is. And like just how funny that would be, but also kind of terrifying in a weird sense. But yes, absolutely. Super unlock. I am too late, but a daughter figure who he didn't want to turn until he got corrupted and maddened turned her almost against his own will. There's definitely potential there. I feel like that's a little close to the Vlad Isabella story because Vlad and Isabella have that as a core theme of their tale. But you can absolutely take and run with that.
And you to twist it slightly, you could have her being a mortal who is looking after him, if we go for a cared with story, or a mortal who is a lover, or a mortal who is, for example, a comrade in arms who just thinks like he does and is the mortal representative of the court while he's the immortal representative. There's lots of different ways we could take this.
You know what?
And then when it's about to go all wrong, okay, in a moment of lucidity, he realizes it's all gone wrong, and he tells her who is responsible for it and turns her and says, go. There's lots of ways that could be taken to make for an interesting story.
Super Orlek, I completely take it back because I realized I misunderstood what you said. And I will now word it much better. Yes, I think there is potential, especially if you're going for that caregiver. I mean, you can do this with the caregiver figure or the daughter figure. Imagine her being that caregiver, watching him devolve more and more and more. And it gets to the point where he turns her because he's kind of almost gone bestial and he can't control it. Like, he literally can't control it, and he turns her without meaning to or really wanting to, and her having to forgive him as his kind of mother.
I'd be careful there because we could end up having some uncomfortable rape analogies here where you have to forgive your rapist. And I wouldn't like to go necessarily with that as a line, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't use that story beat. I just want to make sure it was carefully deployed because I think there's definitely something there about things going out of control.
Yeah, I definitely want to walk the line of like child that goes down a bad path and hurts you without meaning to, and that route. But because of the way vampirism works, that is a difficult.
Yeah, it's a difficult story to negotiate, but I definitely think it can be negotiated well with a bit of thought.
Yeah. Grim Isaac, maybe she's like 15/20 feet tall and just has very thin limbs. That would be terrifying. We did not go with the monster option though, so I think we're keeping her vaguely human.
Yeah, we didn't go with the giant monster, but that doesn't mean that she, within her own size, could be up to like maybe 6 or 7 foot tall and thin and looking quite different. It allows her, for example, as a miniature to stand out against the troops, which is sometimes super important when we're building a miniature. So we'd want something that doesn't, say, for example, look like Bjorn Bearstruck, which is a shit, thin, spindly miniature.
Man, Total War did him so good.
Yeah.
He looks so much better.
But we could definitely build something that doesn't necessarily need to be small, doesn't necessarily need to be tall, because you can have palanquins. You can have lots of different ways of handling it, but she herself needs to stand out bigger than the rest of those who are around it.
All right, I'm calling the vote.
Where's the vote at? Oh, look at that.
Cared for him.
Cared for him.
And then on top.
Okay,
Which I think that's a good setup for her character arc.
Yeah, I think this very much speaks to what starts off with care and then turns into a driving need for vengeance for everything that has been done wrong. You can see where her character beats are coming from. And it also speaks to an interesting story for him as he's beginning to devolve and things are going wrong because of the crown that he wears and nobody really understands why it's going this way. We get a strong reason for why she hates Nagash, because Nagash took this perfect vampire prince who was everything to their people, who was just beautiful, and destroyed him. So that when eventually the large tide of greenskins comes in, they were not prepared or capable of doing what they needed to do because it wasn't just affecting him, it was affecting the entire bloodline.
Yeah. That's actually really interesting because you could almost write it kind of Nagash's power almost being an analogy to a form of addiction. To like a really destructive substance.
Yeah, you could really play on that for a nice metaphor too. And she watches what effectively becomes her child fall to drugs and lose himself completely.
I really love this character as well because I think there's a cool exploration of like vampires are sort of frozen in time. So the idea that Ushoran by this point is already hundreds of years old, but because she doesn't turn into a vampire until she herself is much older. In many ways, she's more mature, despite being technically much younger.
Yeah, there's a classic story in Vampire the Masquerade amongst about the second to third edition of it, where the Ventru, which are the clan of kingship in Vampire the Masquerade, have got a rule that they used to have back in the Dark Ages, which was you never sire youth. You always sire with age, because with age comes that wisdom that comes with time and also the awareness that you're going to die. And as the older you get, the more that becomes prevalent. And you try to, everyone deals with it differently. You perhaps try to form a legacy, or you try to make sense of your life. You try to understand things. You become, generally speaking, wiser with your experience, where youths often believe themselves immortal. They can do anything. There's nothing that can hold me back. They've yet to learn just how mortal they are. And we're dealing with a character who is, as an immortal, someone who's already come to terms with her death by the time she's sired. And possibly, if we go with the story of an addict who turns on the one who's trying to save them, in this particular case, her, and turns on the one who's caring for her, looking after her, and then turns her.
I just had a brain thing.
And makes her an addict in turn.
I just had a cool brain thought.
What's your cool brain thought?
So I love the idea of, so I think this gives us our Nagash core of that it's literally the power of Nagash that she hates. Everything, Nagash literally represents the worst aspects of everything of necromancy. Of the idea
of also ruined the city.
Yeah, like ruined everything. Yeah. Took away her home,
everything.
Took away her people, took away everything. And I love the idea of that. This is a vampire character who is incredibly powerful, really dislikes necromancy, like necromancers, because they're chasing that addiction. They're chasing that power and how it destroys them. Like I could see her talking to necromancers and be like, look what it's doing to you. You have to stop.
I think she might be long enough in the tooth to realize that it's a pointless conversation to have. You know, it's much more of a, you have to be put down.
Yeah, that would probably be her explaining to one of her kids that she tried that route and realized it doesn't work. It's not possible.
I think you're right. We have our answer for Nagash. And what does it mean? She's a necromancy hunter.
Yeah, but one thing I really love is that this could tie in to kind of build up with her joining forces with Sigmar. Imagine if she was the one that, although it's not recorded in the Sigmar tales, she's the one that the one victory she maybe did have was getting Sigmar to take off the crown.
Yeah. She could even have been responsible and part of the conversation of that. Take off the crown, your entire empire will crumble. It will crumble to dust like the empire before. The empire where I once stood beside the emperor, for want of a better language, and watched him become the pawn of Nagash. That is what you're going to become. And when the great threat from outside comes, you will crumble in turn.
Yeah, because I think there would be kind of a beautiful, tragic story, just because this character, we're just heaping all the tragedy on because Warhammer. There would be, I think, a beautiful story of that she, in her own way, loved Sigmar and helped found that empire, that she was close to him, that she helped him get away from that crown, had that victory. But over the course of years, the Lamians have done it to her again. They've taken another nation from her.
Yeah, I definitely think there's something in that. That could build up for an interesting story. Yeah,
and I think that also shows off how fucking terrifying Neferata is. Is that our character here knew Neferata, knew what was coming, and still couldn't stop it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that works really well for Neferata as well, because we don't want to undermine what Neferata is, which is the absolute queen of manipulation. She is going to win this. There are very few in the world that Neferata goes mind to mind to and loses. By comparison, Neferata should win this shadow battle, and indeed does. But that doesn't mean that our character here doesn't have her own small victories along the way, because ultimately her entire people are going to be banished, they're going to be vilified in the Empire, and they're going to be running a shadow guerrilla war within the Empire using their various small fleets and probably some caravans as well across the Empire to bring down Lamians, to stop necromancy, and to effectively hold back vampiric influence, which in many respects stands in direct opposite to the stories that are spread about the Strigony people as a whole, where they are deemed to be, broadly speaking, vampire-loving idiots. Where,
and I love that there's actually still a kernel of truth to that superstition about them. They do love certain vampires.
Yeah, they do. And the best lie is always the truth. It's a classic. So yeah, I love this entirely. I think there's a lot that could be played with here, and with a little bit more of beating down with the hammer and slowly hammering this out into something really cool. You could you could make a perfect character out of this one, I think.
Yeah, okay, we need to get comments and super chat stuff here. MTD, perhaps she considered Shorin like her son because in life she was barren and couldn't have children due to age or simple fickle fate from the gods.
Yeah, I mean, we could definitely have an aspect that she herself is barren, perhaps, and sees Ashurin like a son. Perhaps her son died and Ashurin is similar. There's lots of stories we could go with. These are almost cliched in that these are often the routes that people go with. Sometimes it's just better for her to have had maybe like 4 or 5 children in her life. That's fine. Some of them have died in service. Some of them continue to work on protecting the city. She's a mother figure in general. I think we do, however, need to get a way to get her to him.
Yeah, and I
still of that.
Yeah, I think
where did she get picked up by him, and why does he heed her counsel? What is it about her that makes him go, you're really wise, you're clever, you've just got a practical outlook on life that I want to listen to? Is it she's really smart? Is she an academic? Is she something that we don't necessarily expect given the story we've built so far? But we definitely need a story that suggests, why is Shorin listening to her at all?
And we'll figure that out in a second. Tablam, she sounds almost like a stable Luther Harkin. Maybe she was the one responsible for the external relation of the city during the time of vampires. I don't know what you mean by external relation of the
I'm not quite sure what you mean there, Tablam.
Feel free to drop a follow-up comment.
We'll watch out for it. I'm watching out for it right now. I'll miss it, but I'm watching for it.
Darius Rose, characters based on Kukulane. Maybe one could be something like one of her children, a handsome gentleman that infiltrates Lamians, then transforms, and they realize it's too late. You could do something like that. That probably, you could do something like that. It'd be a little more, that'd be a little difficult, I think, but you could do it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that some of her children will be using the forms and voices of others to infiltrate into the Lamian network. They appear to have more of a sneaky aspect to them than many of the Strigoi, and that's quite fun.
Oh, that she was. So you're saying that she was responsible for foreign relations during the Vampire Wars? Or do you mean during Morcane that she was responsible for foreign relations during the age of Morcane?
Like she was a diplomat during those early times.
That could make sense.
That could make sense. But she's someone who gets on very well with other people, and given that she's eventually going to hold an entire council within her mind, I really quite like the idea that she might have been the head of the parliament in Morcane. Collected voices of Morcane.
Yeah, she could have kind of been like the village, not the village elder, because Morcane's not a village, but yeah.
It doesn't need to be the city elder per se. It's almost like the prime minister amongst all the mortal ministers who present all of their concerns to the vampire side. So she's effectively the mortal mouthpiece. And she's on behalf of all the other people. And that becomes her later job, where she ends up speaking on behalf of the Strigony people as a whole, because so many of them are held within her.
Yeah, I actually really like that. And that like develops that even as a human, she was really, really good at talking to vampires. Really good. She knew how to deal with them. And she would have had to deal with vampires of all different bloodlines during that era. Because there were like fucking Abarash was in Morcane for a long time with Wallach Harkin and them, so she was dealing with them. Neferata visited for a time, so she would have dealt with Neferata as a human and would have had to spar with her during that time, which would have been really interesting.
Yeah, and we can get ourselves a really fun story as well of possibly Neferata trying to take her for herself.
I love that. And her being
so maybe when she's in her 40s or 50s, Neferata goes, I want this one, and fails because the Parliament understands how these vampires work, and she understands how the vampires work as well, and puts herself outside of the influence somehow. Yeah, there's a good story potentially building.
That would be a great setup for Neferata, for how Neferata works. Like Neferata, one of the core foundations of Neferata's character is how she handles rejections, which is not well. The idea that she was rejected by this elderly woman who she offered all these wonderful gifts to entice her over, because she knew how incredible she was, and she rejects her to stay close to Ushorin. Neferata, who hates Ushorin, would have taken that as a huge slap in the face.
Yeah. Yeah. This is good. Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
So we've got a pretty strong mortal story. We know how she's going to be getting into a position with him. And then as he devolves, she takes on more and more responsibility in the city because he's no longer leading in the way that he used to. And she's having to do more. And she end up pretty much caring for him like he's one of his own children until eventually, during the worst of the orc invasion, he turns on her. And during the invasion itself, turns her against her will and makes her one of them.
Yeah.
Or possibly there's more thought behind it than you might first think. Perhaps he's preserving her.
Yeah, I would love if it's a moment of lucidity for him and he knows what she's doing, but she doesn't realize it until later.
Yeah, I definitely think there's something to that. When she but I do think that there's possibly a story there where she does not want to be the addict to what he has become. She doesn't want to follow in his footsteps. Yeah, there's definitely something there. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Also, we get that terrible moment of her literally seeing him blasted by Wa magic and killed. From I can't remember the shaman's name, but
whatever his name is.
yeah. Let's see. We were to Blom going out often, having that nomad vibe from time to time, and seeing him worse and worse each time she comes back. So it likely wouldn't be her leaving, but him leaving. So him going out to do missions and excursions because he was fighting border wars. One of the reasons Morkane was so weak for the Greenskin invasion is that a lot of the mortal armies led by Ushoran were up in the north, holding off the northern barbarians that the Lamians had pushed towards them. So most of their defenses weren't in the south where the Greenskins hit them, coming from the east and south. So the idea that he was constantly leaving and coming back, and every time he came back, he looked worse and worse and worse. And because she hadn't seen them for, think about your parent, one of the, as a child that is not a parent, but Andy might be able to speak better to this. There is nothing more tragic than that you hear in stories from parents about when their kids leave for periods of time and they come back and something has clearly happened and their child's condition is deteriorated and being like, fuck, they should be here.
Flip it. The flip is much easier for most people to understand, which is once you've moved away from home and you don't see your own parents for a while, then you come back and you see them and you're like, holy shit, they're so much older. What the fuck? When did this happen? Why is this person looking this way now? Things have moved on from what they once were. And there's nothing you can do about it because that's the terror of old age. And it's something that he should not be afflicted by because he is immortal and unchanging. But as it turns out,
that's just
he's
kind of
the
fun
opposite.
it's two-sided too. Because for him, every time he sees her, she's getting older.
And that's stronger in some respects.
Yeah, and that's bothering him.
But weaker physically.
Yeah,
old age is coming. I think there's something I'm going to bring up from Zezo there because I do think there's a good one.
That's cool.
Yeah, he realizes that she is the leader they will need, and he makes that decision possibly because of the horror. And I mean, being sired during the fall of the city is pretty fucking awesome.
Oh yeah, that would be super fucking cool, especially because that would mean her birth into vampirism is her literally ripping apart greenskins. Because newly turned vampires are ferocious and strong. They're kind of crazy if they're not guided. You could read the Ulrika story. There's actually a really cool exploration for Ulrika of her, when she recently turns and how she just is obliterating shit because she has such a hard time controlling herself. That's how Nana's story literally starts, is her ripping apart Savage Orc Biggins and taking down all sorts of big greenskin monsters as she fights her way out of the city. That's fun. Getting gleeful. She hates the Gash so much that she ended up basically being the vampire version of one of the main things he did to humans, ghouls. Well, yeah, there's an irony that she is basically recreating Nagash's dark ritual, but her version is consuming vampires rather than men consuming men. In a way, she's actually following his practices without realizing it, which is a fun irony. That's a great Warhammer irony.
Yeah, I quite like that.
You can imagine there would be kind of a horrible moment for her. If you had an end time scenario where she encounters Nagash, of there being this fascinating conversation of she despises him, but he actually applauds her for taking something he made and making it better, just like Neferata had done. And him being like, you and her are very similar, and her hating that.
And it's one of the reasons why Neferata was interested in her in the first place, because she saw in her aspects of herself. She saw brilliance, an enormous ability to lead, a quality that many humans just don't have. She was binding together both vampires and mortals underneath one single idealized version of what the city could be. And she was taking disparate groups and reaching out across the aisle, to use a classic American. It's not just American, it's all over the place, but reaching out across the aisle to bring different peoples of different viewpoints together towards one
As an
goal.
American, it used to be, but anyway.
Yeah, it used to be. It's a little bit less now, but the concept is still there, even if it's not necessarily expressed very often.
We do like to all pat ourselves on the back about the idea, that's true.
But she would be the one that would walk into the current mess of American politics and go, right, everyone sit down, let's work together for the betterment of all Americans. Where rather than falling into camps and forgetting that you're all working for the same team.
Bioflood, but the inlet carousing peoples, we're not using that, would love the Dark Carnival, while they also hate the undead in general and the Gashan specific. I see what you're trying to do. I'm not falling for it. Massive Derp. Sigmar connection is a neat idea. Here's a bit of support. Oh, well,
thanks, Massive Derp. Really appreciated.
All right, last
really
one, and then we'll get into talking a little bit more. Maybe she was a sin eater as a human who took on the burdens of her people at life's end and cared for them deeply. Oh, that's like a cultural, like someone that like takes on, like not a speaker for the dead, but a listener for the dead. That's a cool idea.
Yeah,
Genuinely.
taking someone who takes confessions,
yes,
for want of a better description. I think that's a really cool idea. And if we hadn't ended up with the more leader of the parliament sort of idea, we could easily have gone
this
with
is
this
a great alternative route you can use.
It would have made a great confessor, for example, for the king. And she would have been more of a religious leader rather than a secular governmental leader. But I think we've landed in probably a governmental leader.
Yeah, but feel free to edit your own version, because that's the fun of this. To Plum, hello, Ashkal. Start drawing already. Poor Ashkal.
You've been told.
Yeah, he's been the man is so busy. So that's okay. So we've got a lot of really good strengths here. So we don't have a ton of time left, and there are a couple of polls that I think would be fun to do. Yep. So one would be vampires all have a couple of core concepts, which is strengths and weaknesses. And of course, we got to settle on what's her core strength as a Warhammer combatant type figure. So like, what is her power? What makes her, like, if she's on a battlefield, what makes her fucking terrifying?
Yeah, and we want to go beyond the core of what we've already established. We've already established the idea that her bloodline can consume other vampires and take them within them and use their memories against them, effectively, or against their allies. So we've got that, but that's not a battlefield thing. That's not what makes them what they are. Each of the bloodlines have got something that very much defines them, whether it's the speed of the Lamians, the shape-shifting of the Von Karsteins, whether it's the deep necromancy that you get from the Necrarchers, and so on. What do we have for this particular group?
Yeah, so Strigoi traditionally rely on kind of three methods. The most famous is their monstrous strength. They are by far the strongest bloodline physically. Yeah. Blood dragons tend to be better martial combatants, but like if you're having like an arm wrestling contest, the Strigoi is going to dominate. So we could go with the classic option of incredible strength. The second option, of course, are monstrous forms, which kind of ties similar into that. Also, I do want to thank Exile1 for Andy's. My wife wants me to tell Andy she appreciates the improvement in his audio over the years. It has gotten much better. It's very cool.
Much better. Yeah, I agree. It has.
But I was trying to think of so option one, we could have standard Strigoi, which is things like her children tend to be monstrously strong. They tend to swell up in size as they get more powerful and older. We have number one option, and that would mean she herself is incredibly strong despite her appearance. Where she looks very whatever, and like an assassin Lamian or whatever tries to attack her, and she's able to very casually catch them and just rip them in half. Despite her, being little Nana in her blankets in her little palanquin type situation. Our second option, based on kind of the things that we talked about that might be interesting, would be the idea of her and perhaps her children being able to empower those around them. Like using the natural dar that coalesces around her as a vampire to literally functionally buff nearby humans and vampires, making them stronger, making them more powerful, making them faster and more vicious. In that she herself, of course, is still very dangerous and her stat line would be terrifying. But her big thing that she brings to the battlefield is functionally a support character of that. And her vampires in their own way are support of that. They literally, the Strigony around them or vampires around them are able to, in a way, leech power from them and become mightier. They work well as groups, as collectives, which would be a fairly unique vampiric power. And you might go, well, that sounds kind of crazy. But if I were to read you off the vampire powers from the Nice Dark Masters, there are some weird powers in here. Like psychic drain, which you might go, the what? Like there's all sorts of weird things. So the idea that they literally buff people around them, that they fuel people with dar, which could have consequences. Like that wouldn't just be you get to use it and there's nothing bad happen. Like that could cause mutation or madness or other various issues. So it would be a power that comes at a cost. So we have our first option, which is like standard Strigoi, monstrous mass strength. Second option being what would be a cool name for it? A
buffer.
No, buffer. We'll just make it easy. Buffer.
Make a good name later. We know what it means. That's all that matters for the moment.
For a third option, I almost wonder if we should somehow tie it into the rivers. Like, why do they stick to
I have a third option, because I'll give you a moment to think about the rivers.
Thank you.
Because I do think that possibly, because vampires are notoriously known for, amongst some legends, not being able to cross running water. So these are the ones that can. And that makes for a potentially interesting thing that we should definitely include there somehow. But for a third one, perhaps they are... So they're classic Strigoi. We know what they're like. They're big bastards who do their thing. But anyone they've consumed, they can take their form for a period of time. Effectively meaning that as a Warhammer character, they're your assassins, your infiltrators. You can go, that character over there, ha-ha, Strigoi, as it pops up in the middle of their unit and everyone laughs. Well, not your opponent who's sitting there going, I hate you, I hate everything about you, and I hate these stupid vampires that are somehow in my unit. Rubbish. In the same way that Skaven assassins or Dark Elf assassins can potentially do that within their own units as they go, oh, I am actually this person here.
Yeah, so Strigoi, Changeling / Doppelgangers.
You appear to have gone quiet at my side.
I appear to have gone quiet?
Is it just my side? Can anyone else hear him? Or have I just lost sound?
Chat, can y'all hear me talking? If so, please let me know. If not,
I wouldn't mind a comment just to know whether I'm the only one who can't hear anything here. Because if so, it's going to be a fun end to the stream. I'm going to have to learn my lip reading skills. Okay, so you can hear it, so it's my fault. Let me figure out what the heck is going wrong with my sound.
All right, while he's doing that, I'll just talk for a moment. These vampires, and I'll of course rephrase this when Andy talks, knowing him, he probably unplugged his headphones or something, or my audio just went out somehow magically. But
I'm still not getting any sound, so I'm just going to come in and out the stream. So I will vanish for a second. Oh, no, you just come back.
Okay, great. I don't know what happened, but sure.
I don't know what happened either, but I've got sound again, so I don't care.
Okay.
That was weird.
So, we know they already have water walking. We're just going to give them that they're able to cross running water. They have water walker. So for the fourth option, something that we could explore that could be interesting about why they stick to the riverways. Why do they prefer the riverways over the caravans and stuff? And something that might make them a little more opposed to necromancy is this is one of those things that people always want, and we're always like, it doesn't really work, but you could do it. Is that what if these are vampires that have somehow figured out how to manipulate through their form of magic water, functionally Gyron?
That only the magic of life, so you might want to do that in a slightly different way. Almost the reverse. Gyron can also be used. For example, there's a really good spell in Seas of Blood, I think, from Mana War, where you literally leech the life out of a boat, causing it to rot. Because you take all of the Gyron out. So perhaps one of their core magic types is the magic of rotting, sucking life out in a slightly different way. And they use that by channeling rather than doing the obvious one, which you'd say use all the Gyron, the masters of Gyron. They do the opposite. They're almost the antithesis of it, as they push the Gyron out, and they can, in some respects, feed from the Gyron. Rather than channel the Gyron.
That would kind of match with their like consuming other vampire thing.
Yeah,
and that would still give them like various forms of magic that does interact a lot with like the rivers.
So I think this vote should be whatever we land on for these. And we should view the things that we don't vote for as the occasional trait that pops up in some of them.
Yeah, that's fun.
But the trait we're voting for here is the core. Everyone from the bloodline can do this. Everyone in the bloodline has got this special bonus. So I think the first option of just being Strigoi is probably not an option.
Yep, we'll throw that out.
Yeah, we'll throw that out.
That frees up what I want then.
Excellent.
Yeah, okay. So first option is buffs.
Buffs. Okay, so they are community leaders, which very much reflects the nature of the core character that we're building. And they are capable of using their Dar, whatever their magic, whatever it is, to unleash buffs around them. If we're looking at a battlefield capability, they are a community-led vampire group.
Okay, second option is our changeling doppelganger power, so they can transform into people.
So as they consume others, they are capable of taking on their forms. It also suggests that the mother, if we choose this as a core one, when she takes on the voice of one of the people that she has brought back into her, she can literally take on their form. So if you want to speak to your great-grandfather that has been a vampire and come back to her, she can take on the form, and you can come in young and speak to your great-grandfather, or the first Strigony that came into the Empire. You can literally speak to that Strigony. She or he is sitting there in the back of the thing. It doesn't last for long, and then she returns to who she actually is afterwards. And this is something that all of these can do when they have consumed another vampire. They're capable of appearing like them, allowing them to have some pretty unique on-battlefield powers when facing off against the undead, or maybe even any force, where they effectively get like assassination, hide inside unit rules.
Okay. Third option is wielders of Gyran / life, but not in a traditional sense.
So if we do this, then we're suggesting that the vampires can consume the life within others and are very used at consuming Gyran. It's part of how they exist as vampires and how they subsist. They are sucking that magic of life into them and using that to grant their continued immortality. It also, however, grants them that swollen size that many of their bloodline has. It's one of the reasons why they're so big. And they can use that as a magic type to effectively suck out the life from others, doing things like the Curse of Year spells and the necromancy side, doing equivalents of that where people just age horribly as the life is sucked out of them. Or you suck the life out of weapons so that all the wooden weapons rot in your hands, leaving all the blades just falling off from their hafts. All kinds of rot and age wrapped up inside their core magical capability.
All right, and the last one I have is Masters of the Rivers, where they have control over river spirits. They are able to control like the flow of the water. If water is running, they can manipulate it, which allows them to move their ships faster or slower, allows them to, they control like the spirits of the rivers that are often associated. They have a mastery there. They use the running water not only as defense, but offense. It's why they prefer to fight there.
So what we have here then is a story where she has made allegiances with many of the spirits of the rivers. Okay, with the various naiads and the various gods of the rivers, she has become in many respects, a holder of many ancient pacts with river spirits, and they have been passed down to her bloodline. Now, again, this is something that she might have individually. We're talking about the entire bloodline here. all of the bloodline can do this. If we do it for all the bloodline, that means that all of the pacts that she has made over her multiple centuries of plying the River Reich and elsewhere have turned into all of her bloodline being able to call upon these spirits and divert rivers in different directions, cause boats to sink that are chasing them. Meaning one of the reasons that the flotilla, so to speak, has survived so long is because when they're in the waters, very few can match them. Meaning that even if you've got something like a great wolf ship coming down from the great Imperial Navy, it just flounders in the water while you sail away because you've got access to abilities and ancient pacts that mean that those spirits will hold those boats in place while you manage to get away.
Yeah.
In many respects, allowing them to survive. Is this a core trait for the entire bloodline, or is this perhaps just something that she individually can do?
Yeah, it would be fun if the myth that is often not used in Warhammer of why vampires can't cross running water is actually because of these guys, rather than it actually being
really well. You arrive at running water, you are gonna get in trouble.
All right, polls up. So this is for
all of these.
Power.
So again, we're voting here for what power the entire bloodline has, not just her. She probably has a bit of all of this. Okay, but the bloodline as a whole are going to get the power that you decide here. So choose wisely.
Yep. Do choose wisely, get your votes in. And I just realized we got to catch up on Super Chats because we are hilariously behind now. Boom. Gideon Gleeful. Temporary burst of strength, combining those of her ancestors and all her ancestors to be within her. So I would say there are things that she could do with their wisdom and their traits. One of the things that could be really fun with her is based on her children that she's consumed over the years. Like if any of them are spellcasters, speaking in their voice to cast really powerful spells that she otherwise has not had time to practice or focus on would be terrifying because it could allow her to like wield multiple lores of magic in a way that's very unusual.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it's easy to represent on the tabletop because you can just say each turn she chooses which aspect she's in. If you want to use the word aspect, it's something like that. So is she the spellcaster? Is she the fighter? Is she the diplomat? And at the start of each turn in the Warhammer battle game, you've got to decide which one she is, which will give her leadership advantages or battle advantages or magic advantages. That's three classic areas for Warhammer. We could do other stuff as well. But loosely speaking, she chooses which ones she's drawing upon most. And that gives her some pretty unique battlefield benefits that could be deployed during a game.
Yep. Ricky Chapman, we love the long arms and legs, but maybe an unhinged jaw. The horror of the jaw stretching wide enough to swallow a halfling whole, and from the maw, the voice of those that were consumed spill forth. I mean, she is a vampire, so there would be terrifying shit that she could do. I do love the idea of her being able to, like, literally just open her maw gaping, and, like, you just hear a cacophony of voices. Like, an impossible
that could be an interesting special power. She lets loose all the voices.
Yeah, like a scream of thousands of souls that are not actually being tortured, but are simply a part of her. But that would be horrible for her to be on the receiving end of.
Yeah.
Also, oh god, that would be. You can imagine a dramatic scene where she gets like angry or something, talking to someone, and when she shouts, it's like a lot of different voices layered on top of each other. Like if you've seen the Dune movies, how the voice sounds in the Dune movies. Yeah. Oh, that would be slick. She could talk like that.
That work really well. I agree. That's pretty awesome.
Sarmalian Bloodweaver. Wait, vampires that could cross water? Robin? Fishmen?
They always come back, the fishmen.
Mr. Co-breaking. Phantasms of her consumed descendants thrash around her in battle. Yeah, she could conjure spirits of her fallen children. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I do think possibly that could be manifest in the undead form as ghosts. Because the undead are always known for being associated with ghosts anyway. So her being able to draw upon the spirits of those she's consumed, I think works really nicely and could make for a terrifying story. Imagine her summoning up all the old Strigos who are dead. All of her ancestors, her descendants, that she's consumed over time and a last day. And it's just, you're suddenly confronted with like 400 or 500 ghostly Strigos.
Terrifying. That would be so fun too, because the idea of her like going up against some powerful necromancer that's controlling other undead and like spirits and stuff, and she's like, your spirits are weak.
Yeah,
and like
I've got my kids with me. Here we go.
Yeah, like you
could write a really good story with that because we know one of them is terrifying, but imagine 50 or 100 ghost-like versions of them coming up in a moment of desperation. Truly cool.
Yep. Hoplite 8. A reverse Strigoi drains other strength, a reverse creature of the night. They shine at will, which hurts other vampires. Oh, wait, dang it. That's Twilight.
We weren't doing that.
Ox, any grandfather Reich lore or myth she could be worked into? Yeah.
So
Probably.
the grandfather Reich god has almost no lores and myths written for him, but beyond having the occasional temple or shrine up and down the length of the River Reich. So you could pretty much make this up.
Yeah, there is a grandmother, but she is not known. They say she wanders the rivers.
Yeah.
All right, and that is. Oh yeah, this is overwhelming. The people have spoken. They are masters of the rivers.
Yeah, that one works really quite well. Also speaks a lot to her character, where she is not just the classic vampire, nor is she doing what many of them would do, which would be force their will upon others using Dar to manipulate and control. Instead, she's a diplomat and always has been, and speaks to spirits which are not good or bad. They are neutral in the greater scheme of things. They are not good guys. They're not bad guys. They are neutral, and they are oppressed often by the humans et al. That are using the waterways. The only ones who have really strong relations with them generally are the elves, or alternatively, we pop over to the hags over on the border into Kislev, who purportedly have an interesting relationship, let's at least say that, at least trying to protect them. So we've got an almost oppressed group within the Empire that magically are dwindling, that they are making deals with, which means that they are providing these spirits with something that they get in return, probably lives, corpses, magic, Gyron, some equivalent. And that is keeping these spirits alive in the river. And in return, for effectively giving them the vampiric needs that they have to continue their survival, they protect the Strigony people on the rivers, giving them access to a unique lore of magic that effectively means that they can manipulate, control, and use water in a way that very few others can in the old world.
Yeah, and I think this is so strong because the whole running water thing with vampires has always been weirdly inconsistent in Warhammer, where like the role play is like, oh yeah, it's totally a thing, and then everyone forgets about it. But the idea that it's like it's not actually a thing, except when it is, because it's this bloodline wielding their power against the vampires they hunt, is fucking awesome. And that's like settled itself into the cultural zeitgeist of, oh, vampires can't cross running water. And it's like, oh no, they can, but they're scared because they know those that control the rivers fucking hate them.
Yeah. That works really nicely. And with the other powers that we've not used, we can assume that they are associated with her or perhaps some individuals within her bloodline. I think it's very likely that some of them might be able to shapeshift into those they're consumed, but probably not most. I think it's very likely that some of them are community leaders, effectively the buffers that we were discussing, and they're capable of bestowing those who are fighting for them, the Strigony around them, with a measure of their strength. And that in turn, whilst it might not necessarily be the mother that's doing it, is something that frequently pops up inside our bloodline. If we're making these as a new set of vampires with a new set of rules, we probably create 10 unique rules that this vampire bloodline manifest. And when you're building vampires from them, they can pick like one of them. And they've got that one, and that's the one that they can do. And each one of these 10 powers has probably got like 2 or 3 levels within it. And the more powerful you are with it, the more you can do with it. But all of them, the magic type that they have within them is the magic that manipulates water, because of the deals that have been made by the mother figure at the very top, who has made deals with the water spirits in the Reich Basin. That's all of the Empire and all the rivers there, and has made deals that are long-lasting and pretty much permanent. In turn, though, it does suggest that these vampires also do stuff for the water. It suggests that maybe they intern their dead in the water to be sent to the spirits. It suggests that there is a host of things that they do that effectively looks like a religion. a religion involving the waters, which these Strigony are involved with, which ultimately spans back to properly observing the old pacts that were put in place potentially millennia ago by our vampire, who made deals with these vampires to protect her and her children for perpetuity.
Yep. And luckily, because we're pretty much out of time, we don't need to do a weakness vote because we know their weakness, which is the insanity. They have a horribly debilitating form of insanity that their great mother is functionally immune to because she's able to kind of take in the power
because she has to keep on feeding to
hold it sorry off. Immune wasn't the word I meant to use. She's able to hold it at bay. And because there was a time where she wasn't, but then her children found her. This is great, honestly.
This is great. This is great. So
we got a super chat here, and then unfortunately, guys, it's time for the outro.
It is. I always, when we come to one of these, start the stream going, I have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is going to be a good one, because you never know whether it's going to be a good one, do you? But as it turns out, with every one of our Create This streams, I've come at the end of it going, I freaking love this. I want to use it. I want to develop this further and turn it into a thing. What we have here is the kernel of an idea. We've taken that idea, which is someone who's a Strigoi, who was related to the Moorcain city where all of the Strigony originally came from. And her relation was that she was a leader of the mortal populace there. And she had been dealing with vampires for almost all of her existence. She was used to having vampire blood within her system. She was used to working and debating with other vampires, and she was also very skilled at getting vampires to do what she wanted, as well as the mortal populaces that she both worked with and sometimes against, because she was part of a parliament, the leader of that parliament, but parliaments have factions, and she was ultimately in life a diplomat. At the fall of Moorcain, she was turned and became a vampire. The exact story there, we can debate it out as to exactly why. Was it forced upon her? Was it something that she was persuaded to? I think depending upon the tale we want to tell, we can decide exactly where that goes. What we can say for certain is that the figure on the vampire side, the great king, Abarash on his side, he was devolving hard. It was going wrong for him, and she was looking after him in his later years. And when the great invasion came, he had devolved almost into a barbarian king rather than the philosopher king he once was. And his rages were hard, and he took to the battlefield and tore it to shreds. And in a moment of potential lucidity, he gives her the blood kiss and makes her what she is, realizing that his line was going to fall, and that she was what was needed to potentially bring it about. However, her frenzies, as the city falls apart and eventual fleeing, turns into centuries of being ultimately lost, as she is hounded, not just by greenskins, but by other vampires, mostly the Lamians, who were very keen to wipe that city out in the first place. And she is hounded across the old world and possibly beyond until she eventually devolves into the truly dead, if you wish, but into a monster that is entirely lost itself. Sometimes later, just before the birth of Sigmar and the time of Sigmar, she is nursed back to health by a disparate group of Strigony somewhere in the old world, possibly in the Empire itself, and through various rituals brought back to lucidity eventually, and it involves consumption of other vampires. The strength of their blood and the magic within it is enough to bring back her mind and her rage at what was done. Her rage at what was done to her great city, her rage at what has become of her people, who are now tattered and in rags, wanderers who are completely, utterly fallen in comparison to what they once were. So she starts her campaign to rebuild. This story eventually builds into Sigmar, a figure that she sees as equally being a great potential leader of an empire, but also being corrupted by Nagash, because both her man and Sigmar have the crown of Nagash, which is corrupting them. She becomes a key figure in persuading Sigmar to remove that crown and eventually defeating Nagash. She becomes a great hater of both Nagash and necromancy as a whole, and in time starts waging her war against the Lamians, as the stories of her being involved with Sigmar near the foundation points, of the Empire, get worn away by years of propaganda spread by the Lamians, who very much put her at the center of the vampire worship that the Strigoi are known for. And they are evil, and they are wrong, and they must be hunted down. All true from a certain perspective, particularly if you look at it from the Cult of Sigmar view. Vampires are bad, right? Nagash is bad, right? But the original story that we're suggesting here is that perhaps the vampires were helping Sigmar far more than might immediately be obvious. So we then lead into several hundred years of them warring against the Lamians across the old world, and mostly losing. She is a figure that understands Neferata and what she's capable of. And for all they may be losing from an outside observance point of view, they are still capturing, securing, and consuming vampires of mostly the Lamian bloodline, meaning that across the old world, Lamian grip upon it is far looser than it could have been. And this, to a degree, is an important part of the storytelling, because the Lamians, when you look at them on paper, are nigh on unstoppable. They should control most of the old world. Why don't they? And often the story is, because they're lost to Dar. Oh, yes. And they are individually, self-serving. And it goes against the stories of what the sisterhood does. As they go, their individual pride brings them down. It's a bit Karstein in terms of how they try to resolve the Lamians not being wholly successful. And here we can say that there is at least one force beyond the other bloodlines working against them. And it's a force of Strigoi who are absolutely single-mindedly focused on stopping them. And they have tools to do it, because when they consume them, they will get access to many of their memories, allowing them to know who their networks are, allowing them to know who their allies are, and for some of them, even occasionally take on their form briefly before revealing their true monstrous nature hiding beneath, as they realize that their close friend has been taken by the Strigoi, and what they're speaking to is in fact a horrible doppelganger who is about to kill them and consume them next. They have all become bogeymen that the Lamians will be terrified of. The Strigoi from the shadow, their sister who comes to them and says, "No, really, I need help." Does she? Is it their sister? Or is it something else? It gives the Lamians a real hint, an edge of fear. And that's fun. I mean, it makes for some cool stories. We've got a vampire bloodline that can potentially shapeshift, can manipulate rivers and waters because of ancient pacts that the original figure made with spirits up and down and across the old world, spirits of the water, where they feed it and protect them and ensure that the humans that are always there don't screw with their shit too much, polluting the rivers or whatever else that they do. They effectively are providing offerings to the small gods of the rivers, and in return, they get the ability to effectively hide on the river systems, use the river systems to their benefit, and ultimately survive. A bloodline of Strigoi who are monsters, both physically and in terms of your Lamian perspective, everything else too, because there is nothing that these monsters won't do to kill the sisterhood and bring it to its knees. This is the consequences of what happened in Murkane. In Murkane, Neferata fucked it. And in return, her network across the old world has been fucked. And it gives us some lovely stories for why running water is a bad thing for many vampires. Because running water, quite literally, is because there's spirits in there who will suck them down. who will damage them and drain them because of ancient deals with this Strigoi. It's not just, oh, it's a fable. No, it's not. You cross running water and the spirit will pull you down because they've got a deal with this Strigoi saying that they will do this to any undead thing that isn't of their bloodline. Now, some vampires are immune to that because of one reason or another, because of their bloodlines. Others, though, 100% aren't. And running water does hurt them. And we've now come up with an in-game reason for why that's the case.
Which is awesome.
I think she rocks. I think we have made a vampire lord who makes for a great Warhammer Fantasy Battle character as well. She's got unique powers. She's basically capable of infiltrating others using water magic, maybe even moving water terrain that might be on the battlefield. This lake, it moves 12 inches that way. Super awesome. I'm drowning your characters. All sorts of cool shit that we can do with this. Plus, she is a tragic figure who's seen everything that she loves be destroyed, who holds within her the collective memories of her peoples, of every one of the vampires she's consumed. I didn't even go down on the whole consumption of her own bloodline. There's so much that we've done in this stream. I'd just like to say thanks. We wouldn't have built this. We had no idea what this is going to be. Nope. But this is genuinely a freaking brilliant conclusion to let's create a vampire lord, I think.
Yeah, I would have never gone the set of directions that we ended up going. Yeah. Because I would have definitely voted differently on quite a few of the options.
Yeah, me too.
But I'm so
pleased. Really glad we landed where we landed. This is a great character. So great, in fact, that, as far as I'm concerned, she's now in Lawhammer, and she justifies certain things that have happened in Lawhammer. And will I use her later in Lawhammer? I already know where.
God, we can't freaking wait. I've been getting caught up, and then holy shit, things have been happening. But
just wait.
Yeah.
We're about to, the fan's about to hit the shit.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for taking the time to come join us today. We really appreciate all the support. This has been awesome. We were
such a good stream.
Yeah, not gonna lie, a little nerve-wracking of like going full hog on the Lorebeards channel and like just only streaming over here. That's a serious migration. So we really, really appreciate y'all taking the time to come show up. So. Especially because we're doing this now on a new day. We're not on Wednesdays anymore. We're on Tuesdays because Alexis and Ross are on Wednesdays. But so thank you all for showing up. Thank you for the very generous support. We really appreciate it. It helps us sleep better at night. And we'll grab our last couple super chats here, and then it's time for us to. Well, I'll make a couple last second announcements, and then we'll head out.
Sounds good. What else have we got left?
Getting Gleeful model idea. Her being carried in a litter, sat wearing a hooded cloak, one muscular, elongated arm outstretched with a clawed hand, and an SCP-096 type jaw, but with massive effects, so just a big, wide open jaw. That'd be awesome. That'd be fucking sick. Because you definitely want them mid doing something spooky for your vampire minis. Biofoot, at least we have a name. Inlet Carousing Peoples. Get out, Biofoot. Get out. Man always comes in here with an agenda. But anyway, thank you all again so much for taking the time to come hang out with us. I am going to send y'all off for YouTubers, or Twitch streamers on a little raid. Vera Samilla is streaming, who is actually a Lorebeard. She's one of our cast members that y'all will be seeing for the first time as an official Lorebeard this upcoming Sunday, immediately after regular Lorebeards. We'll go straight into the book club. Which will be a good time. But do be sure to join, not exactly us, but us as the Lorebeards tomorrow, exact same time, exact same place for a what if episode, but for Warhammer 40K being what if the Emperor died.
It's such a good topic. I almost wish I was in this one because it's a subject I've discussed several times down through the years, and I'm really interested to see what they come up with.
Yep, and then of course we have Lawhammer on Friday.
Yes, we do
this week, and then is the Rookery back in?
Rookery is back this Saturday. Actually, at 7 p.m., where we're doing the third and last part of the world building workshops we've been doing. You don't need to have watched the previous ones. We've been building an alien planet, which is mental. Well
exciting.
worth turning up to. If you have never done collaborative world building before, turn up. It's a little bit like what we're doing here, except all of the ideas are going to the author who's doing the world building thing. He's writing them up on a board and then turning them into stories. It's super fun. That's 7 p.m. It's only an hour, and it's going to be super cool.
Yep. And then this upcoming Sunday, join us for Sea Lord Ashland / Aislinn for when we explore the most brutal Admiral Ulthuan. And next week, we'll be doing a bit of Tides of Torment stuff for like the new lore that's being released with the game and all that. So we'll see you then. So thank you again so much for watching. I am posting, for anyone on YouTube, I am posting Vera's, the link to her YouTube stream. If you want to go sub to her on YouTube, I'm sure she'd really appreciate it, and we'd really appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.